and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. FSN's Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A tsunami warning issued this week for parts of the US West Coast and Japan was downgraded quickly after a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake off of Russia's east coast sparked widespread concern about potential impacts across the Pacific. After the downgrading, officials said that coastal areas should still remain cautious for any further activity. Ira Spitzer sent this report from the US West Coast from the city of San Francisco.
One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded struck deep beneath the Pacific Ocean near eastern Russia, triggering tsunami warnings across the region, including in Japan, the Hawaiian Islands, and the U.S. West Coast. Waves over a meter high were recorded in California and Hawaii, but caused minimal damage. Still, emergency officials are urging residents to stay alert, particularly near harbors and beaches, due to the potential for strong currents and any more aftershocks.
There was worrying new data for the United States on Friday that showed job growth slowing dramatically in recent months. Unemployment also rose slightly, all of it raising questions about the overall strength of the US economy. FSN's Mitch McCann pored over the numbers and sent this report from New York.
The US economy added 73,000 jobs in the month of July, well below analysts' expectations of 100,000 jobs. At the same time, job growth for the previous 2 months was revised down by a total of 258,000, an unexpectedly high number. The slowdown may indicate that the job market is much weaker than previously thought and that American employers are adopting a wait-and-see approach to the president's tariffs before making hiring decisions. The data shows employment in the US government continued to decline by another 12,000 jobs, and professional services and business services lost 14,000 jobs. Meanwhile, the US unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 4.2%.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Sources are confirming your dog died earlier today, and we're all really sorry you had to find out about it like this, buddy. Though it's a lousy thing to have to learn from an online web video, and even shittier to hear from a cold, hardened newsman's voice that you can't put a face to. Your pet passed away in his sleep while you went out today, and we understand how shocked you must be right now. Sources added that there are many local shelters with animals in need of a good home, though we understand that no dog can ever truly replace the one you just lost. I lost a dog once, but my mom was the one who told me about it, and she was quite the comfort. In this week's op-ed pages, Pantene CEO Marcus Russo laments feeling like the only one who gives a shit about rich, lustrous hair. In other news, a study finds that newborn infants can tell if their parents are losers. A man who just assembled a desk is unsure how he has every screw left over. And Jeff Beck is lured into a dark alley with the old guitar pick on a string trick. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. It's talk radio you control. You can give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Let us know what you're thinking about tonight. And get it on the international airwaves. In the studio, it's Stu.
Muted. And Mr. Penguin, except I'm muted.
Sorry.
All right, no, I'm not.
Unmuted the wrong mic.
Yep.
We both got a few things we want to talk about tonight.
Oh, yeah, more than just a few.
Where would you like to start off?
I think we should start off with the Tornado Cash case. But I will give a little bit of a preview of what's coming up. We do have a decision handed down by the First Circuit in regards to the Crypto 6 and Ian Freeman's case. It's not good, but it was not entirely unexpected. So we'll see. We're going to be seeing SCOTUS, I guess, or the U.S. Supreme Court at some point here, and there's also the appeal, or not the appeal, sort of an appeal. It's an appeal to Trump, basically, in regards to a.
You're referring to the petition for a pardon.
Yeah, a pardon. Yeah.
Yep. I have heard a little bit about this Tornado Cash thing, but I haven't looked in great detail into it. Tornado Cash, for the listeners, is it's a coin mixer where you can have your crypto transaction mixed with other like transactions so they lose track of who's sending what to who.
Yeah, so basically it's a piece of software. It's not a website like has been the case with other mixers. It's there was a front end that you could access through a website, but the website itself is sort of embedded, as I understand it, in Tornado Cash. So when you run Tornado Cash, you're doing it completely independently of basically any centralized website, basically. So the story I brought in is from CoinGeek, and it basically the current status of the Tornado Cash trial, and this is specifically Roman Storm because there's another Roman in Europe that was found guilty of money laundering, which is crazy because he never even touched money. That case was the courts. I mean, the problem is juries don't understand like what it is that they're deciding on, and in that case, I don't know. It was a crazy case. It's Europe. It's a little bit different, but what's happening is not money laundering, and they were smart enough not to bring money laundering charges in this case, I believe. We'll get into the specific charges here in a second, but so the Tornado Cash trial is currently nearing its end. Basically, the trial's over. What's happening now is the jury is deliberating, so they're having to come up with a decision, and they have not come up with a verdict as of today, basically. At least not that I could find anyway, and I'm pretty sure there was no decision today. So because I couldn't find one anyway, and I'm sure as soon as if there is a decision, there'll be somebody posting about it either on X or Mastodon or somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I did not see that with a quick search of the news today. News today is basically pretty much just stories coming out that maybe I'll do a little bit better summary of what the situation is as of the end of the trial. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. So the federal trial of the Tornado Cash co-founder Roman Storm is entering the end game with closing arguments commencing and a verdict expected early August. Storm is accused of money laundering. Okay, so he is accused of money laundering. I thought it was maybe he was a conspiracy to launder, but not money laundering. Anyway, it could be that this article has just got it wrong here, or maybe I'm thinking of the other not related case, but there's a very similar case in relation to. This is Ethereum, I believe, and the other one's Bitcoin, but Samurai Wallet basically, which is also in that case it's software that sort of has mixing facilities built into it, as opposed to they're a little bit different. It's for a different blockchain basically. But anyway, Storm is accused of money laundering and sanctions evasion or violations, I guess. If found guilty, it could set a significant precedent for how United States courts treat creators of decentralized privacy-preserving technologies. In August of 2023, federal criminal charges were filed against the 34-year-old Russian expatriate and fellow Tornado Cash developer Roman. I've not had to try and say his last name before. I'm gonna butcher this, but I think it's Semenov, or maybe it's Semenov. I'm not really sure. It ends in a V. By the U.S. Department of Justice, which accused the pair of laundering more than $1 billion in criminal proceeds, as well as facilitating sanctions violations. So just to be clear, this other guy they're talking about is not this. So there was 3 people that were co-developed the software, and this guy is not the one that was prosecuted in Europe. This is a third person that they're referencing here, I think he was living in the Netherlands and now he went back to Russia. So he's outside the grasp of basically the United States' clutches. While Storm was taken into custody in the U.S., Semenov is still wanted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and believed to be in Russia beyond the DOJ's reach, resulting in Storm facing trial alone. So two of these guys are both named Roman, but the guy that's being prosecuted in the U.S. currently is Roman Storm because they physically have access to him.
Where did they catch him?
In the U.S., I think, because I'm pretty sure he was in the United States. I don't think he was. I think he was Russian, but he's in the United States, so they didn't actually have to go anywhere to get him. But with the other two guys, they did have to. They do have to try and. Well, one guy was, I think, in the Netherlands. I think they prosecuted him, but
were they in?
The other guy left to Russia.
Were they anywhere in North America when they made this thing?
Oh, this is a good question. I think so. Now, in theory, this is the problem. Because in theory, they haven't done anything illegal, and they didn't commit money laundering. So that definitely shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have been found guilty in Europe on that. And as far as the United States, what they did was they wrote a piece of software. They never touched the money. Normally, when you're laundering money, like you have to take somebody's money and then like do something with it. But that's not what any of these guys did. They wrote a piece of software, and then the users basically, I guess, if you want to say there's any laundering going on, it would be the users who are doing the laundering. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just a protocol to basically create privacy for yourself, which it's not laundering unless it's linked to criminal proceeds. So
right, but the FBI was claiming you're using this to send money into North Korea.
Well, see, the thing
really
is,
scary places like that.
That's not even what the U.S. is claiming, because it was the North Koreans who, what they're claiming is used this protocol to launder the money. It's not even, but they're charging him with money laundering or conspiracy to launder. But either way, it sounds more like they're trying to get him on conspiracy to launder.
There is one allegation here that Tornado Cash had been used to launder billions of dollars worth of crypto, including $455 million stolen by the Lazarus Group, a cyber criminal operation sponsored by the state of North Korea.
Right, that's a North Korean group.
Right.
So they're basically it's only about 10% of that of the how do I say this, transactions that went through the Tornado Cash protocol.
Well, either way, that's a ridiculous argument to make. Like, what are you going to charge the? You're going to charge the U.S. Mint for printing dollars because they're relatively anonymous and they could be used to do, I guess it might be harder to send some of those into North Korea, but physically it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if you take a $100 bill, you go to a store that's operating completely legally. They sell, they sell tomatoes, or they sell lunches, right? Yeah. Maybe you got yourself a burrito, for example. You give them $100, they give you change. You get $80 in change back, and then you go and you buy something. You go do something illegal with that change, right? Now, are you gonna charge the legal business that sells tomatoes or burritos with some sort of money laundering because they gave you the dollars that you then proceeded to use? I mean, they had nothing to do with the crime. They couldn't have stopped it. They couldn't have known. And it's basically the same situation here. Tornado Cash doesn't know who you are, and it's a piece of software. So it's actually, and the humorous thing about this is, people are still laundering money with Tornado Cash because they don't have any control over it. The developers have zero control over it. Once that software was released, once that protocol was released, that's it. They what they did was they did something called burning the keys, and so they don't have an ability to modify that software at this point. It's out there, it's open, it's in the public, anybody can use it. And so it's kind of like, well, what's the point of like charging these people? And what it is, I think the point of it is it's to scare other people from writing privacy preserving software, which is really crazy, because if you think about it, like, what is it doing? It's not doing anything more than somebody choosing to use use cash over maybe a wire transfer to do, some sort of money transfer, right?
Anonymizing your financial transaction.
Right. It's more like having dollars in your wallet and using that to buy something because you're not identifying yourself to the person that you're buying from, and you're not identifying yourself to an intermediary. When you do a wire transfer, you have to identify yourself to the bank. So it's like somebody choosing to use Tornado Cash is like somebody choosing to use cash in their wallet to buy something, as opposed to using a bank to make a wire transfer to buy something. It's literally, that's it. And it's crazy to think that is writing the tool, or creating a wallet, right? Like if I physically made a wallet, a leather wallet, you wouldn't charge me with money laundering, would you? Just because somebody can use it for ill intent, they could put their ill-gotten dollars in it, right? And then go and spend that, right? And that's all that's gone on here, is they've made a neutral tool to preserve privacy, and instead of calling it a privacy tool, the government is saying, well, it was designed to conceal. And it's like, no, it wasn't designed to conceal, because when you use the word conceal, you're implying some sort of criminal intent, and there was no criminal intent here. It was intended for privacy. The only person who is saying it was intended for some sort of criminal intent is you, but you have no basis to make that argument. The only basis they had in this case was basically a quote from like a reporter that was misattributed. So it ultimately wasn't the case that there was ever any discussion of helping, hackers or scammers or anything of that nature, or North Korea. It was literally the government itself misattributing a $600 million something to do with $600 million worth of laundering. And these guys had nothing to do with that. And the government is just, it's very much like what they did with Ian Freeman in the Crypto 6 case. They tried to make it such that it looked like he had some control or some knowledge, even though they admitted that he had no knowledge of any of the scams going on at the time that the crypto was sold. And he didn't promote it to scammers, but a privacy policy was based, what did you interpret it as? My interpretation was it was something along the lines of, they were arguing, well, because he had a privacy policy, like every other bank does, somehow that's advertising to criminals. Like, that was my interpretation of what they were arguing effectively.
Yeah, basically he's trying to be private with his money, and so that means he must be doing something bad. Right, which is crazy. Which is horrible argument, and I can't believe they even brought that. I can't believe they even let it escape their mouths. It was so ridiculous. It was, but these juries, they don't understand what's going on. They're confused. They trust these malicious actors who call themselves prosecutors and law enforcement. They don't understand that these guys are human too. They're liars. They're thieves. They are, they're out for themselves. They're looking to, climb the ladder in the, political arena, and what they're doing is for their own personal gain. They're not telling you the truth most of the time. They're doing whatever it takes to win their case in order to get ahead, or to support their buddies, basically, right? Yep. Yeah, they have no care for the morality of the situation, or even justice. None of that. And that's the crazy thing. Mind. It's like the people who are actually have a set of morals and are abiding by those morals. Those are the people that the government is prosecuting, and it's not prosecution; it's persecution. They don't like people who actually are good, upstanding members of society, doing good things and trying to help other people. Roman Storm and these guys, they're helping you to protect your privacy. And, Ian, same thing. He's trying to help people, protect themselves. And what is the government doing? They're trying to undermine that, and they have no actual ability to really stop it. And this is the kind of the messed up part, as I was saying before, despite the fact that all of these people are either in hiding now or, in a cage,
the laundering hasn't stopped because it's a neutral tool that neither they nor the government can shut down. So, this whole idea that this is going to somehow do anything, is kind of, it's misleading. It's sort of like scaring. It might be scary to people, but the question is, let's ask another question. Has it actually impacted the availability of these sorts of tools? And the answer, and I'm not even just talking about like Tornado Cash, because obviously it hasn't impacted Tornado Cash in that people can still use the Tornado Cash protocol, and people are still using the Tornado Cash protocol for privacy preserving reasons, and including laundering money. But there's other tools out there to sort of create anonymity too that they've also gone after other people for. And I'll give you a perfect example. So the very thing that Ian was charged with, or what he was doing anyway, there are lots of people still doing it online. If I want to go and I want to purchase cryptocurrency, either with a wire transfer or cash in the mail, or that kind of thing, right? That type of thing. You could still go online to this day and search for cash by mail, Bitcoin, or cash by mail Monero, and you'll come up with sites that will put you in contact with people who are willing to sell you without any kind of KYC, Bitcoin or Monero or other cryptocurrencies. So it hasn't even stopped it. It hasn't even put a dent in it, really. They want you to believe that they're having some sort of effect, but that just goes to show you the dishonesty of the system of the law enforcement, of these prosecutors. There's a quote in the Crypto 6 case in particular when they tried Ian that I love to bring up, and when the defense asked the agent who was responsible, whose sole job it was to go after scammers, how many scammers she caught, she said none. Yeah, none, not a one.
That's
She's never caught a scammer in her 30-year career. Now tell me something. Who is the dishonest person here? Is it the guy who's selling Bitcoin, or is it the government agents who are going after people who haven't done any harm to anyone and has actually helped people to protect themselves and are now lying about about their job, about what they do, not even doing their job, according to what they're supposed to be doing, and they're taking a paycheck for it? That's fraud. That's outright fraud.
Yep, it sure is. There were plenty of crooked people in that courtroom, but Ian
was not one of them.
Ian does not fall in that category.
No. I mean, the good thing about Ian's case is at least Ian went into it knowingly, in the sense that it wasn't just a random person, and Ian knew what was coming before it occurred. It's not as bad as when the government goes after people that have no awareness of what they're about to face in terms of the harsh reality of the governments, the lies and things that are going to be told against them. At least Ian knew that the government was going to come in there with lies and manipulate evidence and that kind of thing, right? But your average person doesn't have a chance. This is why most people take a plea deal. They're not prepared. They have no idea what's going to happen. If it wasn't for that mental preparation that Ian had from decades of activism and trying to change the world for the better, I don't think he'd be able to face the music either. When it came to this injustice system that we've got. He literally is he's sort of like almost like a Dalai Lama, almost like and at least what I would perceive a Dalai Lama to be, this very cool, calm person, who no matter what is happening to them, they're not getting enraged and upset and and doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. No, he's calm. He's taking it with ease. He's he might be sitting in a cage right now, and he's mentally prepared for that. He's just sort of been able to do that. I don't know. I can't tell you too many other people who I can name, even activists who would be as able to handle. He's already spent over a year in a cage, guys. So be able to handle that. Now, the only other person that I can think of that's spent that much time in a cage, besides Ian in our community in New Hampshire here, Free Staters, is Rich Paul, or Nobody. So. And he spent, I think it was about a year in a cage. And again, it all. And the funny thing is, this all goes back to a guy named FBI agent named Phil Christiana. So it's basically Phil Christiana has been trying to persecute or find things to charge Free Staters with because he really, really hates our politics. And he's spent 2 decades now basically trying to like take people out to sort of undermine the Free State Project, and he's failed. He's miserably failed. But that doesn't mean he hasn't risen in the ranks within the FBI. He has. But yeah, he's still getting a paycheck. He shouldn't be, but he can't even do the job that he really shouldn't be doing in the first place. Well, but yet he's still getting, raises and things. It's crazy.
Yeah, the way I understand it, this guy, ever since the first raid, he's been trying to build a case.
Way before that.
Again, yeah.
He was before Ian even arrived in New Hampshire. Before Free Talk Live came to New Hampshire, this guy was going after Free Staters.
Yeah, and the first raid was just an obviously sad failure of an attempt.
Oh, it was a slander campaign. There was never anybody even arrested.
And then he spent years building the Bitcoin case against him, and that was the best he could come up with. It barely had legs at all.
No,
I can't believe it made it to the courtroom.
It did. And if you look at the actual sentencing, now they were looking to basically throw him away for life. All right. If they had gotten everything they had wanted, there was a criminal enterprise charge, and they actually held off arresting Ian for 5 years when they could have arrested him in 2017, explicitly because they wanted a criminal enterprise charge that would have gotten him basically life in a cage.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a dangerous person.
Yeah.
What do you think? Have you out there seen people railroaded like this for reasons other than their actual charges? Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. FSN's Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te called the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. FSN's William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline tariff is lower than the 30% the US had threatened, but the EU had originally pushed for a zero-for-zero agreement.
During the week, Canada and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. FSN's Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny Liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin. So we were...
we've got, actually...
Oh, we got a call?
Call-in show. Yeah, we're going to go straight to the phones. On screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
I know two people that weren't railroaded. Rob and Roger.
Okay.
But privacy is not a sufficient condition for crime. It's a necessary one. Privacy not only requires government.
It's not necessary. People commit crime in the public. Oh, come on. Fallacy one. There you go.
I'm in my first sentence. I'm really in my
first sentence. I know. You didn't even make it through one sentence without saying something completely silly.
Just give me like 15 seconds.
No, we have to deal with the contradiction at hand, Skeeter, or we can't go on with. The
thing is,
Skeeter, we can't have a conversation if you're just going to say a bunch of nonsense, and we can't call you out on it and get to like some use of the human language to where we understand what each other are saying, because you can't make a claim that that crime is prerequisite of privacy, because people commit crime right in the open.
Yeah. Most crime is
maybe
committed.
Not as often, but it definitely happens.
No. Most crime is committed in the open, because most of the crimes that occur, people don't even know they're committing, because we have so many laws and so many rules and regulations.
Yeah, I would say victim crimes. Most people, I would say more time people will use whatever privacy is available to them, but sometimes not. And they'll just go for it.
I mean, a lot of crimes are committed when people are on drugs and not thinking, and other sorts of situations like that too. So.
Can we agree that is factual, Skeeter?
I've been getting away with it. So look, privacy not only...
you've been getting away with saying nonsense and people not correcting you. Can we agree that privacy is not always required?
Why do you think that agent couldn't find any scammers? You know why? You know what the fundamental thing that helps them get away with crime?
What?
What do you think it is?
Go ahead, tell me.
Privacy.
Nope, you're wrong. So let's back up a second and
indeed.
explain to you why that's not the case. Every single one of these scammers that the government, supposedly, couldn't find, there was an ID and a passport or some sort of driver's license that Ian literally had, and the government also had because they seized his laptop. And one of the things they used against him in court were those photos.
I don't want to go into facts of the case because of privacy. Like, I can't trust you guys with information because every time I've heard you guys present evidence about some libertarian's case, it turns out when I investigate, it's total BS. It's a bunch of omission, selective facts, and manipulated in such a way to fool a gullible person on drugs with a beard living in New Hampshire, right?
It's interesting. It's interesting how our political enemies are always claiming, this sort of thing when it's actually them who are, manipulating, words and evidence and things of that nature. Did you ever notice this?
Yeah. So the two cases I've looked into that you claim are the biggest injustices, which is Ross and Roger Ver. So also Ian Freeman, but I at this point I don't care to look any further because I've seen enough. I've seen how you guys omit evidence, how you guys don't present the full story, and you guys just try to your whole philosophy is based on rhetoric and not finding truth.
Listen, back up a second. If we were not telling the whole truth, why would we be listening to you right now? Why would we be giving you an opportunity, and anybody else for that matter, to call in and dispute what we're saying? We're the only radio show that I'm even aware of that lets anybody call in and bring up issues that they want. If we're saying something that's wrong, you've got an opportunity here to correct us, but that's not what you're doing. You're calling in, and you're basically just saying things that there aren't true, and you don't even have to look them up to figure out that they're not true.
Rebuttal. Sorry,
Give
rebuttal.
you guys
Skeeter?
credit for. I don't know when I'm muted, so I give you guys credit for that. No one can be 100% delusional, but you guys are close. Right? You guys don't even know the theory behind what you advocate for. And you fall under the same
What do I advocate for?
That democracy sets.
First of all, back up a moment, because there's not one person here. There's multiple people that co-host this show.
Yeah, we all have wildly different opinions.
Some of us are, more knowledgeable than others on certain subjects, right? Like, Stu, I don't believe you have read anything in regards to the Tornado Cash case or Samurai Wallet, that we're going to be talking about, right?
Nope. Actually, I haven't specifically read about those.
Yeah. So, now you have read about the about the Crypto 6 case and Ian Freeman, obviously, because we're talking about it, and you had some insight, obviously, that you're expressing. But that doesn't mean we're all equally as knowledgeable. So yes, it is possible, that we get things wrong from time to time.
Yep. And it's possible that you go and look at whatever the internet says the facts are, or whatever the court says the facts are, and those are wrong.
Right.
I was there for Ian's case, or the sentencing part of it, which was enough for me to see.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. This is we're pointing out the things that the other side is saying that is either wrong, or sometimes they're lying about or manipulating. So if you go online and you search for it and you come up with a press release from the government that says Ian was convicted of fraud, or is suggesting he was convicted of fraud, when in fact that was not in fact the case, he was never convicted of fraud. It's no wonder why people like you might call up and say we're lying or manipulating things. You actually would have to read the I guess I'm trying to think what part of it you'd have to read. I don't know, would it be the sentencing? I think it might be the sentencing. But you'd have to read the decision ultimately at a minimum to know that. And most people don't do that. They go and they read either an article online, and the article, the writer has only referenced the press release by who? The government. And the government has misled the news by releasing a press release saying he was convicted or suggesting he was convicted of fraud, when that was not in fact the case. He was never convicted of fraud. he was convicted of money laundering, but they threw out the money laundering charge, right? Now, he was convicted of conspiracy to launder, but they didn't throw that out. So you could say he was convicted of conspiracy to launder, but you should also then point out the fact that the money laundering charge was thrown out. So he wasn't convicted of money laundering.
And not only that, but who uses privacy as a tool? Most, I would say, government. And so let's see what Skeeter
I close the door before I
has to say
when
about,
I go to the bathroom, usually in public, in a stall. I usually close the stall door.
You must be doing something criminal.
I know. I must be shooting drugs up or something behind that stall door.
All right.
Because I value my privacy.
I brought you back, Skeeter. Go ahead and make your attack on privacy.
That was my point. Stu. Privacy not only requires government, it allows government to assume tasks the market would otherwise do by inhibiting market's true ability to solve things. Privacy inhibits how markets would expose government inefficiency. And you advocate for this because you don't have to pay the price, like in democracy when you advocate for things.
Why is it that we cannot have open government?
Now. I'm talking about generalities. In game theory, there's something called a repeated game, right? And reputation. And without privacy, it can solve problems like tragedy of the commons and basically all crime and inefficiency. But when you introduce privacy, it perverts incentive to gain at society's expense. That's why the best money is a crypto social credit score. Go ahead, Penguin.
Well, I think I'd like to answer that one.
Yeah, go for it, Stu.
So you're assuming that you know what is the most efficient and what is the goal of what the goal of a society should be,
or if we even want it to be the most efficient.
And thanks for the call tonight. We've got some other callers we're going to get to, but his whole argument assumes, that the collective has a goal or has wants and desires and thoughts and some kind of a soul. When it doesn't, it's just made up of individuals, and they all want different things. And so I don't know. Not only that, but if things keep going the way they're going, Skeeter will be very happy because we'll all be forced to use some type of crypto that's very programmable and traceable, and there will be no privacy anymore. At least not for you and I, but they'll have all of it up at the top. We're going to go to another call. On-screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, good evening. I want to bring up some stuff here. Sometimes I talk about something else, and people don't understand. I'm not changing the subject so much. I'm talking about how it relates to something that we're talking about, and there's a similarity or some principle or something like that involved in both of them.
Yeah, I understand. Now, fair enough.
People say I'm changing the subject here. Well,
you're allowed to change the subject anyway on this show. So
it's Free Talk Live.
Yeah, that's why we call it right. That's why we call it Free Talk Live.
Let's say you got a really sharp, hardened steel knife, and it's really good, and you use it to cut your food, and you carry it just in case you need to fight off an attacker. Okay, but then you also use it to commit unprovoked violence against innocent people. Then you have nobody but yourself to blame if somebody takes that knife away from you. And now you don't have it to cut your food or to fight off attackers. Okay, kind of like a local police department that can be useful when a kindergarten kid, first day of school, gets lost walking home and winds up going the wrong way, block after block after block, hour after hour. I can't find my home. Oh, well, why don't we call the police, and the police can go there and give the kid a ride home, okay? And the police can also fight off attackers, or at least go there after the fact and put you in a body bag and then go looking for who did it. Yeah. But then they misuse the police department as a weapon of unprovoked violence against innocent people, and then they have only themselves to blame. Those voters and those legislators have only themselves to blame when the weapon gets taken away from them by freedom fighters. Now, a case in point here, on 22 November 2016, a U.S. Border Patrol goon was confronting 6 human beings in a pickup truck at a gas station in Florida. The goon was aided and abetted by 2 Nassau County deputies. The goon takes 3 of the humans into custody, and the other 3 decided to leave. 2 of them in the pickup truck. They drove away, and the other one on foot ran away. The 2 deputies chased him onto a busy highway. I'm happy to tell you he made it safely to the other side. And I am also happy to tell you that one of the deputies was hit by a sport utility vehicle and died at the scene, killed in the act of his own malicious wrongdoing.
That's not nice.
And while it totally serves him right for aiding and abetting a U.S. Border Patrol goon. So that's how misuse of a law enforcement agency to commit unprovoked violence against innocent people, then they have only themselves to blame, because the chase never would have happened if people hadn't voted for candidates who support immigration restrictions.
Yeah, maybe it's better that he's not still doing that, but I don't think it's right to take joy in the death of a person like that.
Yeah, I would say I certainly won't be crying for the guy, but at the same time, it's it's like, can't we just stop doing this kind of nonsense? Do we really have to use violence against people who are, peacefully, crossing some arbitrary line that, has been created by, basically, mobs of people who are out to selfish ends, which is effectively, and I think in most cases, because they have this impression that something's being taken from them when in reality they're just having to compete, with a larger segment of society.
Now, let me bring up another similarity case here. Okay, on June 1775, the Americans lost the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was actually on Breed's Hill. Okay, and if you're one of the Americans at the Battle of Bunker Hill, it would be stupid to waste time trying to spot the exact same enemy soldier who wounded you a couple of months ago in Concord, at the Battle of Concord. I mean, all these guys in the red coats, there's no reason to care which enemy regiment they're from, because all of the British regiments are the enemy. They're all an organized force that is on a mission to commit acts of war against the American forces. And the same is true, in this case, Nassau County, Florida deputies are as much the enemy as Border Patrol goons and Immigration and Customs Enforcement goons in mid-strike. U.S. Marines were sent to aid and abet Immigration and Customs Enforcement goons out in Los Angeles. A lot of police departments have inked contracts with local police departments, and state police around the country have inked contracts. They're in bed with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and so they are enemy officers.
Yeah, I think there's a point that you're kind of making here that I kind of would agree with, at least at one level or another, and that is effectively that these guys with badges and they come up to you, they're threatening you. They're acting, they're using violence against you, and even if there hadn't been somebody who had committed murder previously, they're still threatening you. So there's an aspect of justification in terms of using defensive violence against them. Now, whether or not you should, maybe another story. But I think you've got some point here to be made.
Now let me do another comparison thing. Let's say you park in a crosswalk, and that's wrong because pedestrians need that crosswalk. You're blocking them; they got to go around, and then it's dangerous going into the intersection to get across the street, and so you have to pay the price. And they write a note on there that says what you did wrong and what the price is. Let's say it's $100 for parking in a crosswalk. Okay? Now that's 5 $20 bills. And you don't have any reason to care of all the $20 bills you have in your wallet, and they don't have any reason to care which serial numbers you're paying the price with, or which Federal Reserve Bank issued which notes. They're all of equal value to you, and it's the same amount of deterrent whether you pay with an odd-numbered one or one from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City or one from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The same is true when the government paid the price, like I said, on November 22nd, 2016 in Florida. They paid the price of one cop for voting wrong. They paid for imposing immigration restrictions. It's not a very high price. It didn't serve as a deterrent, just one measly cop. But it doesn't make any difference which badge number they pay the price with or which agency issued the badge. A cop is a cop is a cop. So that's a point that people need to remember. And if they didn't want, the cops are always free to go get a job. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, by the way, I said the Americans lost the battle, but they took comfort in knowing that they were able to take out so many British soldiers that it was said that a few more victories like that would end British dominion in America. So they took comfort in knowing that they took out about 400 British soldiers. Even though the Americans lost the battle, they would at least they kill as many of them as they can. The Battle of Trenton, by the way, the Hessian soldiers were sleeping. It doesn't matter what they happened to be doing at the time. They're enemy soldiers. And nowadays, the FBI would be all over George Washington and his men because they committed the ultimate federal offense in going to the Battle of Trenton. They crossed a state line. They crossed the Delaware River from Pennsylvania into New Jersey. How dare they cross a state line on their way to a battle against the government? But that's another thing there. It's just important to understand these things because some people, victims of drug enforcement, for example, who think they have to find the exact same enemy cop that busted them, and they can't find the exact same cop, so they don't do anything. And one way that we can really use word power is to agree with the cops and the law enforcement ones who are expressing they're scared for their families. That, if they get outed and doxxed, that puts their family in danger. Oh, yeah, that's a very important point. Don't harm the family members because they don't deserve it. And when you say that,
yeah, it's interesting.
That's the part they don't want to say. You know, the reason people are so poor in other lands is because the governments there are so corrupt. But they don't want everybody to realize that because then the government, they'll realize that the reason that they're struggling themselves is because the government is stealing so much money and manipulating the economy. So from A to Z, agricultural subsidies to zoning variances, they're manipulating every facet of economic activity to the benefit of special interests in getting reelected and taking advantage of the vast majority of voters who, so let's see, for United States Senator, I saw a lot of lawn signs for this one, so that must be the name I'm supposed to vote for. Let's see now, for representative in Congress. This one lives right down the street from my sister-in-law. She told me to vote for this one.
Certainly voters are very uneducated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therein lies the problem, and ranked choice voting would help some of that. But remember, you've got...
I don't know.
I'm skeptical. I don't think you're going to fix the system with the system.
I don't think I don't think that would be a worse system. I think it would be a better system, but I don't necessarily think it's going to, radically change, reality for us in that most people don't know who they're voting for. So, they don't know the first person they're voting for. They don't know the third person they're voting for, and probably less so the third person they're voting for. So,
yep. Thanks for the call tonight. I'm not sure if Leos are exactly the enemy, but I do see the similarities to an invading, occupying force.
Yeah, I think I describe them as a, what's a justifiable target, so to speak. I would say that they're a justifiable target. Now, I'm not suggesting that people, it's a good idea to target them. I'm just saying that
you're saying there's a natural ramification for acting the way they do, most of them do.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's like when you talk about a war, right? It's you're justifying your actions against another group, and effectively, law enforcement is using their power against us, the people. And so, if they are doing that, that makes them a justifiable target. But at the same time, I think he's right about they're not being a justifiable. A family member is not a justifiable target because they may not even agree, with their partner, or their kids may not agree with them, right?
Yep, that seems like innocent bystanders.
Right.
We're going to go to the phones where we've got another caller. On-screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey there. So the dude Alex Karp from Palantir, many, I don't know how many, but there's a few videos where he's basically saying that, these people on the other side of the world, if they're thinking about harming Americans in Montana. Because, you know, you can't have your nice home in Montana with your white picket fence and your family when you got to worry about those brown people on the other side of the world. And so if we get any kind of terrorist problem, we can just press the button. We know where everybody is. We can get rid of their sister, their girlfriend, their daughter. Basically, you know, the same thing that's going on in some unnamed Middle Eastern country.
You're saying he's advocating for the domestic use of Palantir and
members.
What's the other one? Anduril? That's their AI-guided weapon system.
Oh, Habsora and Project Lavender, and I get a little. They work with each other. They're different programs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on that note, you had mentioned something earlier regarding, you know, in your conversation to Skeeter that basically you can go on the internet and you could get a incorrect answer, especially now with AI.
AI is
now,
terrible.
I've been experimenting with the upgraded version of Alexa, which is basically, you know, a very neutered AI, extremely neutered AI. But it's good for my best friend who's 88 years old, so I've been experimenting with it to see if it works for him, and I got it all set up for him. But I asked that Alexa plus AI a question, and I asked Google AI, Google Gemini, the exact same question. They give me the opposite answer. And not only did they give me the opposite answer, it was worded exactly the same with the exception of the word not.
Yeah, these things are guilty of hallucinating all the time. We can hold you over. We've got to go to a break right now if you'd like to. Give us a call, 603-283-6160. Have you experienced AI hallucinations? I certainly have. It's Free Talk Live.
We have a breaking news blast on the tragic situation happening across the country in which more than 40,000 Americans have been trapped in a Confessions animal hoarding marathon on Animal Planet for the last 13 hours. The Animal Hoarders Marathon began at 9 this morning as victims were preparing for a full day before hearing the fateful sound of the show's opening credits. Almost instantly, thousands were pinned to their couches by a story of a heavyset homosexual living with his partner, his toothless sister, and 31 chihuahuas. Rescue workers rushed to free as many victims as they could.
The rope secure? Rope secure. We're gonna get you out of here. Just hold on a second, ma'am.
Wait, I think the next one is about monkeys.
Ready? Ready! Pull!
No, wait. Can I just see what happens with the feral cat?
In other parts of the country, rescue workers enlisted volunteers who had already seen the episodes to spoil them for the victims.
Oh, yeah, this one. This is about the lady living with the dogs in the trailer. She doesn't even get evicted in the end.
This is the Onion News Network.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. FSN's Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te calls the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. FSN's William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline tariff is lower than the 30% the US had threatened, but the EU had originally pushed for a zero-for-zero agreement.
During the week, Canada and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. FSN's Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A tsunami warning issued this week for parts of the US West Coast and Japan was downgraded quickly after a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake off of Russia's east coast sparked widespread concern about potential impacts across the Pacific. After the downgrading, officials said that coastal areas should still remain cautious for any further activity. Ira Spitzer sent this report from the US West Coast from the city of San Francisco.
One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded struck deep beneath the Pacific Ocean near eastern Russia, triggering tsunami warnings across the region, including in Japan, the Hawaiian Islands, and the U.S. West Coast. Waves over a meter high were recorded in California and Hawaii, but caused minimal damage. Still, emergency officials are urging residents to stay alert, particularly near harbors and beaches, due to the potential for strong currents and any more aftershocks.
There was worrying new data for the United States on Friday that showed job growth slowing dramatically in recent months. Unemployment also rose slightly, all of it raising questions about the overall strength of the US economy. FSN's Mitch McCann pored over the numbers and sent this report from New York.
The US economy added 73,000 jobs in the month of July, well below analysts' expectations of 100,000 jobs. At the same time, job growth for the previous 2 months was revised down by a total of 258,000, an unexpectedly high number. The slowdown may indicate that the job market is much weaker than previously thought and that American employers are adopting a wait-and-see approach to the president's tariffs before making hiring decisions. The data shows employment in the US government continued to decline by another 12,000 jobs, and professional services and business services lost 14,000 jobs. Meanwhile, the US unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 4.2%.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. General Motors reports record sales of its new disposable car. This is Doyle Redland reporting. General Motors has announced a 56% increase in earnings this year, attributing much of it to February's wildly successful launch of the GMC Whim, the first ever non-refillable disposable automobile. Debuting at a cost of $1,100 each, the vehicles are flying out of showrooms as quickly as dealers can stock them. Whim enthusiast Glenn Shriver. Spencer.
I recently consumed 4 vehicles driving from my home to Daytona Beach for the first annual Whim Owners Convention. I've already collected all 8 colors.
Rival automakers are preparing to counter with their own lines of disposable cars, including the Ford Temporera and the Chrysler Dumper. The 2002 Mitsubishi Ditch will be unveiled later this year with a projected sticker price of $799. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. The phone number here is 603-283-6160 to get your thoughts and comments on the air. I would like to thank Paul for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Paul went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks again to Paul and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And looks like our caller held over, so we're going to continue this. I do want to back up, though. You're still there, right?
I'm still here.
You were talking about Alex Karp and something about guys in Montana. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, I wish I had the exact video and a quote, and I will gather it in the future so I can just I'll have it on a card and I'll just basically quote it verbatim. I believe he was being interviewed and he was basically saying that, we need to use technology to basically, think the mafia, think Hatfields and McCoys, think not individualism, not the son will not be held for the iniquity of the father and all that. But yeah, it's family thing. So the sins of the father in comparison. And, basically that you can stop these terrorists, what he considers a terrorist, by not only targeting them, but also targeting anybody that's been, 3-4 degrees from Kevin Bacon, or what, how many degrees from Kevin Bacon?
Isn't that what they call collateral damage?
Yeah, how many degrees? Well, it's a little more than that. Because
it's the metadata linking. I forgot who it was. Higher up government official was quoted as saying that we kill people with metadata, meaning that they'll just look at digital data that they can get about who's been where and in contact with who.
Right, no evidence required.
Right, and they'll make decisions to drone strike people in other countries based on this information.
Yep. Because A talked to B, talked to C. It doesn't matter that C had nothing to do with anything. It doesn't know of anything. We're still gonna kill him because he might be a terrorist, even though he's not a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but it's worse than that because they're actually going back to the old way of human thinking, which is groupthink. Not that that's really that old, but
yeah,
we've all been raised in school to believe that at least the illusion of individual rights and innocence until proven guilty and all this. But traditionally, that's not how humans have operated anyway. Even if we don't operate that way, we're believing it. You look back in all the religions, which I'm not going to name any specific ones because I'm not trying to cause any controversy today. I'll save that for another day. But
probably because they all did it.
They talk about roots and branches and things, and we got to wipe out this nation, and we got to wipe out this nation, and nobody's ever going to remember them. We're still talking about them, but it's a return to that kind of thinking. Where a city attacks another city, you're going to basically have city-states attacking other city-states, like back in Samaria.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the mentality now, or like a vendetta. So we want to deter.
It sounds kind of like politics, kind of like
family.
Like left versus right in some respect too.
Yeah, but weaponized with drones and AI.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick before I go, I don't know if you're about to drop me, but regarding what Skeeter was saying and you rebutted regarding efficiency, How do you define that? He had actually, so I don't necessarily agree with him, but he believes that efficiency is evident by productivity. And of course, if you don't have any customers, what good is productivity? And with that, I'm going to drop off. Have a great day, gentlemen.
Yep. Thanks for the call. Productivity is all well and good, but if you're being productive in digging a hole and then filling it back in, then is that really beneficial? If you're listening, Skeeter, think about that one.
There's definitely more to the world than how efficient or productive something is, or I can think of some kind of perfect examples in my line of work. I could have a computer that crashes all the time but it's very efficient and has lots of output with bad output, but it puts out a lot, right?
Yeah.
Or I could have something that actually functions and works, and the output is good, right?
Right. And so it comes down to what's really valuable is going to change from one individual to another.
Yeah, actually, I can think of some great examples too of where this has occurred. There was something called RDRAM at one point, and it was really, really fast, but your system would crash on you on a regular basis in order to achieve that. So the question is, do you want the most efficient thing, or do you want the thing that's reliable and a little bit slower? And I think most people would want the thing that's a little bit more reliable, and even if it's a bit slower.
Yep. Well, previously we were talking about court cases involving
Tornado Cash.
Yep, Tornado Cash, and we touched briefly on Samurai Wallet, and we talked some about Ian's case.
Yeah, let's continue on with the Tornado Cash story I've got here.
Okay.
So a little bit of background. So Tornado Cash is a digital asset mixer platform co-founded in 2019 by Storm Semernoff and Alexei Pertsef. I butcher again. I apologize for butchering these names. A Russian national and resident in the Netherlands. Okay. A digital asset mixer, or a tumbler, is a platform that mixes potentially identifiable digital assets, funds, with others, usually by pooling them to obfuscate the fund's original source. Naturally, such a platforms have become favored tools of terrorists, criminals, and money launderers. Oh my. And as such, often find themselves on sanctions lists, particularly in the US. Prominent examples being Sinbad.io and Chip Mixer. So I am aware that there is a little bit of this going on in the United States. I don't know if it's I don't know how to what degree. I mean, here's the thing: there's thousands and thousands of these mixer sites, and I will give them that there are definitely a handful on the U.S. sanctions list. But it's actually kind of weird because there's so many of them, and it's so easy to deploy one. The idea that like this doesn't even work. Like, they're literally just giving us a false impression. They're kind of defrauding the public that they're doing. The government that they're doing something against North Korea or Iran or in the sense that they're sanctioning, right? Because sanctions don't work, and these are sites that could be easily shut down, and in most cases, and what are they doing? They're sanctioning them. I mean, it's like it's what's the point of sanctioning two sites when there's thousands of these mixer sites out there? And certainly maybe they can't shut them all down. So, okay, fine. But you sanctioned 2 out of thousands. So, and then of course you can't, how do you sanction a protocol, right? And they tried, but they failed. In the Tornado Cash case, actually, specifically, they tried to sanction the protocol. So people couldn't use the protocol. And the government was actually sued in another case, and the court ruled that it's not property, and therefore it can't be sanctioned, basically.
I agree, kind of, except that they did something, and then the volume on Tornado Cash decreased by 85%. So it did have an effect.
Right. So I think I'm going to go back. So I understand what you're getting at there, but it didn't necessarily have an effect on the market, so to speak, right? So yes, Tornado Cash may have seen a decline when the website was taken down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there was a decline in use of the protocol, in that there could be other websites that people moved to or switched to using. Because remember, it's not just Tornado Cash. There was a front end that is included with the software when you download it. that you can run on your own machine, but you were also able to use the website that Tornado Cache put up to interact with the protocol as well. And so just because you don't have the particular website doesn't mean you don't have access to another website hosted by somebody else to access the Tornado Cache protocol, or for that matter, one of thousands of others. And so if one website declines in traffic, that doesn't mean the other websites don't make up for it when people switch from one site to another.
Yeah, but this was a decline in the decrease of all the transactions passing through Tornado Cache.
Through the protocol?
So it's not like, it's not like they were just going somewhere else to use it.
But
that's
not necessarily accurate either, though, in that, yes, you're assuming that they're going to go to another website that's using the Tornado Cache protocol. But the thing is, there's other protocols out there, and there's also other websites that are not using the Tornado Cache protocol. So, and I'll give you an example. So when Tornado Cache, when the website put the North Koreans on their blacklist, which they were able to do, they couldn't blacklist North Korea from using the protocol, but they could blacklist them from using their website, and they did. And when that happened, what did North Korea do? They just went and they used the protocol. They downloaded the software themselves and ran it on their own systems, as opposed to using the website to use the Tornado Cache protocol. Now, I understand that when the website was shut down, it did see a drop in traffic, and that would be accurate, but or the Tornado Cache protocol, that would be accurate, saw a drop in usage. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a drop in mixing services or use of mixing services as a result of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on August 8th, 2022, the Office of Foreign Asset Control of the U.S. Department of the Treasury bestowed this unenviable honor on Tornado Cache, sanctioning the platform along with any Ethereum address that interacts with it. Making it, funny thing is about this, that was not clear in their sanctions. Like when they sanctioned it, they just listed like Tornado Cache. Like it was not at all clear that you couldn't interact with a wallet just because it had interacted with like the Tornado Cache protocol. Even though I understand how that could be an interpretation of the sanctions, right?
I think it was clear. I remember when
I didn't think
when all this came down, that was one of the main focuses for me, is that they
okay, so maybe my memory is wrong.
They had this ridiculous expectation that you could actually check and see if the address that you're about to transact with, and like you would have to ask somebody about to send you crypto, can you send me the address you're going to send from before you send the transaction, so that I can check your address. Like, this is so ridiculous. Nobody was going to comply with it.
And obviously, once somebody has your address, you can't stop somebody from sending you Ethereum. And in fact,
and not only that, but you just send it to another wallet, and then it's not linked to that address anymore.
It gets even crazier because people sent, actually, from what I recall, basically just randomly sent Ethereum to addresses. So like you may not have even published your address, and you might have ended up with some Ethereum from a sanctioned wallet or protocol or whatever. So yeah, it was crazy. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Not use my wallet now that because somebody sent me some Ethereum that was sanctioned? Like how are you supposed to deal with that, right? Like what, is the government seriously saying that because that Ethereum is now tainted and you have no way of like only spending the portion of it that is not tainted, that like you're like, I mean let's be real, like nobody's going to be able to have control over that.
Yeah, nobody was even going to try to comply with this because it's impossible.
Right. I mean, they've basically made criminals out of everybody using Ethereum just based on the impossibility or the infeasibility, at least, of your average user being able to deal with that scenario. Even if in theory somebody could maybe somehow like only send a portion of the Ethereum if they wrote code to do so, but like unless you're a programmer or somebody does implement such a feature, you wouldn't even be able to do that.
Yeah, the only way to comply would be to burn all your Ethereum private keys and never touch the coin again.
Yeah, I mean, is that reasonable? No, of course it's not reasonable.
Yeah,
of course, when was the government ever reasonable? I'll give you that, but
yeah, they did get people to turn over their gold a bunch of decades ago.
Yeah, they did, when they basically stole people's gold. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm talking about a long time ago, but yeah. The Treasury Department accused Tornado Cache of having aided criminal actors, which is absolutely insane because they released this protocol, and once the protocol is released, they don't have control over who uses it. It's like a hammer. If you manufacture a hammer and you distribute hammers, and then all of a sudden you find out that bad people are using your hammers, how do you
aided criminal action?
Right. Even though you have no control over what the people do after you sold them the hammer, right? Including, laundering more than $7 billion in digital assets, 455 million of which were believed to have been stolen in 2022 by the Lazarus Group. That's the the sanctioned North Korean state-funded hacking organization, by the way. A year after the platform was sanctioned, the DOJ filed charges against co-founders Storm and Semenoff. Pertsev was tried, convicted, and eventually sentenced to 64 months in prison by a Dutch court in May of 2024 for his part in Tornado Cash's creation and operation. Well, and this is the crazy thing. He was convicted, if I'm not mistaken, of money laundering, which he did not do. That's the crazy thing. But they didn't seem, from what I understood,
conspiracy to launder money, I guess, would be like the best they could unless he was actually had a large amount of his own money and was laundering it. But
yeah, I mean, I think,
but that's not what they were.
I don't think the jury understood exactly what it was.
I don't think the jury
money
usually
laundering
understands.
was. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. Like people vibes. Yes. Oh, this is one of the topic I definitely wanted to bring up. I haven't brought up yet. But juries, people who aren't familiar with juries and haven't seen enough trials, and most people haven't seen any trials, but juries have this tendency to basically convict based on vibe. Whether they like somebody or not. It doesn't really matter what the evidence is. The evidence might show somebody is innocent, completely innocent, but that doesn't change the fact that the government can tell a story and be very manipulative and give people a bad vibe. And then people, base the conviction on the fact that they don't like somebody, as opposed to actually, evaluating the evidence, paying attention to what the evidence is and seeing whether or not it matches the story. And sadly, we have the situation, it seems like everywhere where, the whole jury system just isn't really that good. It's actually a pretty poor system, in that people don't listen. They don't think about what's going on. They just assume that the prosecutor is telling them the truth and they believe them, and they don't spend any effort in actually coming to conclude one way or another. Or if they do think about it, they may just, it doesn't really matter to them. Right. They have, some people have this kind of this attitude that I've come to discover of, well, they might not have done something this time that was, immoral or wrong, but this is, I'm going to convict them anyway, just because they've done something in their life that was immoral or bad. Right.
Yep.
Have you heard that? Have you heard that line of thinking? Because I have, and I was just blown away. And it's not really the first time that I've heard that line of thinking.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. And also, a lot of people don't even really think about what they're thinking. They're just subconsciously know this person's been hauled up in front of a courtroom. They must, they
must be guilty. They must be
I'm just going to say guilty.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's see here. So pretrial. So the case was assigned to U.S. District Court Judge Catherine Falla. I'm butchering the name, I'm sure. And ahead of the trial, there was the usual flurry of motions to determine what evidence would be permitted and what experts would give testimony. At a pretrial hearing in July of this year, Falla granted the defense's motion to bar discussion of the August 2022 sanctions imposed on Tornado Cash by the Treasury Department's OFAC. Falla reasoned that the trial was already too complicated for a jury without including a sanctions discussion, and she's right. I mean, on one hand, these cases get really complicated, and on the other hand, there's no way a jury is going to understand what's going on. And the prosecutors, they use this to their advantage, and they try to just make it nice and simple for them, and they oversimplify it, and it's like, okay, well, this person's not guilty, but the jury, the prosecution, the jury only listens to the prosecutor because the prosecutor made it nice and simple. And it's like, of course, then they listen to the prosecutor and it's like guilty. They vote guilty, and they really shouldn't, particularly since OFAC lifted the sanctions in March. This later U-turn was perhaps no surprise after the new vocally pro-crypto Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent was sworn in on January 28, 2025. Filia also ruled that the trial wouldn't hear testimony referring to the Van Loon case, a civil suit filed by several Tornado Cash users who claimed that OFAC had no right to apply sanctions on software. Last November, a federal appeals court ruled that OFAC shouldn't sanction the Tornado Cash's smart contracts, with the same court later ruling that smart contracts aren't property. Thus, aren't property? Yeah, I guess that's right. Thus, they're beyond OFAC's ability to sanction. Finally, Filia also denied a motion to admit private messages from Storm expressing his remorse over the misuse of Tornado Cash. I mean, this is the kind of thing where it's like they're basically saying you can't present a defense. It's like the prosecution's allowed to argue you're a criminal, but you're not allowed to say no, I'm not, and then show evidence, of what you've said in the past in order to show that you did not have criminal intent. The judge ruled that the communications were overly self-serving and not material to the jury's evaluation of intent or conduct. That just kind of like so just disgusts me. That you have this one-sided argument, and the jury is not aware of this, right? The jury is not aware that the defense isn't being allowed to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they consider that a contemptible act. It's like,
yep.
It's like when they send you up in front of the headsman and then, you duck and they're like, oh, you deliberately ducked. That's an extra beheading.
Yeah. There was a trial that I filmed, Bear Arms in Massachusetts. And very much the case where he apparently was supposed to file something in to alert the prosecution of what his defense would be, basically. And he didn't do that, even though they were aware of his defense ahead of time. And the judge said, yeah, you basically can't defend yourself now. And it was really crazy. The idea is, well, the government gets to make an argument at this point, and you don't have an obligation to defend yourself. It's up to them to prove your guilt. But the problem is that, like, you also should have had a right to make an argument in your defense. And the judge here is now saying, well, you're too late. You didn't let them know ahead of time and file the right paperwork, even though they knew. And it's absolutely crazy. It's like you're literally, somebody's life is at stake, and you're denying them the right to defend themselves because they made one little error. Anyway.
Yeah, to them it's all a game, and human lives are the pieces.
Yeah. So the trial kicked off on July 14th in the Southern District in New York with jury selection, followed by opening arguments on July 15th. From the prosecution's team, Kevin Mosley, Special Assistant U.S. Attorney, began by telling the jury that Storm created Tornado Cash with the primary motivation of enriching himself, even if that involved laundering dirty money. As reported by Bitcoin Magazine, who were in attendance, Mosley argued that hundreds of millions of dollars worth of digital assets had been funneled through Tornado Cash, and that Storm, Semenoff, and Peter Cerf could have made the platform less attractive to criminals, but chose not to. What obligation did they have to not make it attractive to criminals?
Not only that, but
they had no obligation.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, is what gets lost in the White House couch on a weekend.
The banks launder many billions of dollars every year. Are we going after them? Of course not.
Probably in the trillions. Who knows?
Yeah, probably.
Give us a call.
I think it's something like $2 trillion or something like that a year.
Free Talk Live.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. FSN's Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te called the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. FSN's William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline tariff is lower than the 30% the US had threatened, but the EU had originally pushed for a zero-for-zero agreement.
During the week, Canada and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. FSN's Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. You can call in and get your thoughts and ideas on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
We were talking about
Tornado Cash.
About this Tornado Cash case, which is pretty involved thing.
It is. This is one of the biggest cases of the year, I would say. Other than... Well, let's see. Ian's case was last year, kind of, sort of. So, but the appeal, I guess, was this year, though. So, but yeah, this is basically one of the 4 or 5 like big cases. One of them is Roger Ver. One of them is Samurai Wallet. One of them is the Ian's appeal, with the Crypto 6. Trying to think. One of them is Roger Ver, probably. Although some of these are. I don't know if they're all going to come to trial this year, so I'm not 100% sure if you could say that. But these are basically the current ongoing cases, I guess I would say.
Mm-hmm.
They're the big cases this year when it comes to like freedom, Okay, so I'm going to continue on with this article from CoinGeek. So he also pointed to how Tornado Cash, and by he, I believe this is the prosecutor, he also pointed to how Tornado Cash had facilitated sanctions violations by allowing the Lazarus Group to launder money for North Korea. Again, he did not have control over this, because when they added the North Korean wallet to the blacklist on the website, what did they do? North Korea just went around it by running the software themselves. They had no control over whether or not North Korea used this protocol. All right. The prosecution went on to suggest that Storm had as good as admitted guilt, citing text he allegedly sent to his co-founder saying, "Guys, we're done for." Yeah, I mean, so being done for doesn't, this is the messed up part about this. Like, I understand how somebody would think that that would imply guilt when you make a quote of this to a jury. The problem with this is that it's manipulative, in that saying you're done for doesn't necessarily mean you've done anything wrong. You could be done for because you ran out of money, because your business wasn't successful, right? Like, that doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, right? And in this particular case, saying we're done for, all that means is that from his perspective would have been that they're basically going to destroy us, because from a public relations standpoint, because bad people did bad stuff with our tool, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct to say that he now thinks he's done something wrong, like it, or something illegal. It just means that he thinks this is not good for what he's trying to do or accomplish. All right, guys, we're done for. When news surfaced that North Korean hackers had used Tornado Cash to launder the proceeds of their $600 million hack of Axie Infinity. So the defendant was running and profiting from a giant washing machine for dirty money. And it was a washing machine, but was it for dirty money? No, it wasn't. That was not the intent. And there's no evidence that that was the intent. And he knew it, said Mosley, who added, he even marketed Tornado Cash as a washing machine. Yeah, this is literally a t-shirt. This is their freaking evidence, people. A t-shirt with a logo of Tornado Cash on it with a washing machine. This was in reference to a now notorious incident where Storm wore a t-shirt with a washing machine and a Tornado Cash logo on it to a digital asset conference. See, and the thing is, like, I can understand, and I think I was telling you this off air, actually, I can understand somebody thinking that this is in reference to so there was, like, the mafia at one point was using laundromats to launder money. Now, here's the thing. There's no difference. There's a difference between you can wash something and not be laundering money. And that's basically what was going on here. It's somebody's interpretation of this, basically, that is like saying that it's laundering money. So the system, if somebody goes and they takes what we call dirty money, meaning something from an illicit source, and they use the Tornado Cash, they would be laundering money. If, on the other hand, I am taking money from my legitimate source selling, t-shirts, and I take that and I use Tornado Cash, I am not laundering money, because there is the source is not illicit, right? And so they're basically saying that the only use for this is some sort of illicit purpose. In reality, it's more like a hammer, right? It could be used for illicit purposes, but it can also be used for completely legal purposes, completely legitimate purposes. And so the prosecutor is going to go on here to basically, make the argument that it was primarily used for, illicit purposes. Not that the, defendant had any control over whether it was used for illicit or legal purposes. But nonetheless, the prosecution goes on to say basically that it was something like 54% of it, the funds that went through it, at least at certain points, were from illicit sources. And the defense, when they cross-examined the prosecution's witnesses, or FBI agents, experts, in other words, they actually admitted that it was not 54%, but rather it was closer to something like 10%. So basically, the vast majority of this, the funds, and I'm going to put funds in quotes because I'm not sure I would agree it's funds, but the funds in quotes were in fact not illicit, and it was just your average individuals using it. And there were some bad actors. But anyway.
I wonder how they would determine anyways, but like the nature of it being a coin mixer. I wonder how they determine how much of it is illegal unless they're doing 50% of the volume on there just in order to untangle the mix transaction mixing.
I think the answer to this is you can see what's going into Tornado Cash, the protocol. You just don't know where it goes from there. It's something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay.
So they might be able to figure out, that a certain percentage of it is from illicit sources, assuming they can determine that it's. I mean, here's the thing, like. How are you determining something is an illicit source, right? Like, are you just claiming it's an illicit source, or are you getting convictions and then those convictions, you're using those convictions to say this is an illicit source, right? I suspect it's just like they're speculating on, the illicit sources, and they're including all illicit sources, as opposed to, saying, okay, 10% of it is from, cases where we've got a conviction, and thus it's 10%, right? Because like otherwise you probably would have an even smaller percentage of cases, saying it would be a very small fraction of those funds are probably going to be linkable to illicit sources if you also are having to convict in order to make the claim that it's an illicit source. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I would speculate that it's mostly speculation.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Like, and obviously the FBI agent sort of admits to this here too. So, it doesn't get into that much detail, unfortunately, in the story. And this is a fairly long story, but anyway, and I unfortunately haven't read the transcript of the actual trial, but it would be another, I probably don't have the time to do it, but it would be a very interesting case to read the transcript of the trial for, just like it was for the Crypto 6. He did that so he could pretend the whole washing machine was out of his control, suggested Mosley, who argued that in fact Storm was still running the whole laundromat. So here they are, making the claim that despite the burning of the keys and everything, that he still somehow had control over everything. And this just obviously isn't the case, as multiple defendants, expert witnesses will testify. However, the government has no problem lying. And what they did was they basically brought FBI expert, I'll put expert in quotes here, so-called expert FBI witnesses to testify that, to something that basically wasn't true. Anyway, so that is that he had control over it. All right. The prosecutor added that he chose to launder money time after time. Finally, Mosley told the jury that Storm had attempted to hide his actions by cashing out using an account that wasn't his own, and that they would see documents that attest to this. I don't know if those documents ever appeared, because it doesn't say anything more about them in this article here. But anyway, after Mosley had finished, defense attorney Carrie Axel, a partner at law firm Wayland LLP representing Storm in the proceedings, gave her opening remarks. She began by describing Storm as a hardworking immigrant with a talent for computer programming who is nothing more than a hardworking privacy advocate that wrote some very useful code. Here's the thing. I can definitely say that the types of people who write this kind of program are definitely huge privacy advocates. They're not in some sort of, they're not in bed with some sort of, underlying criminal element. They just want their own activities to be private, and they work towards those ends. If I had to describe these people as guilty, I'd have to describe myself as guilty, because I also work towards these ends. Now, I'm not developing any, cryptocurrency related products, but I certainly do in the space of like email, for example, and computers. I sell computers, that don't track everything you do, for example. The systems we sell run Linux and GNU and free software. If that's, if privacy is somehow illegal, then I'm just as guilty, in that respect as these people. In the variation on the classic, it's not the gun, it's the person who pulls the trigger argument, Axel stated that Roman had nothing to do with the hackers and scammers. No, of course he didn't. He didn't want them to use Tornado Cash. Yeah, I don't even think, it's kind of funny, like, and this is sort of where I would kind of be, I think, critical of Storm in this case. Like, I think the idea that, like, when you say that a certain group of people can't use this tool, I think there's a moral implication there. I think everybody should have the right to use that tool. Now, I don't necessarily think that people should be doing, maybe the hacking, or other bad stuff, but that doesn't mean that you should deny them access to the tool, right? It's just a tool. In defense of the platform, she added, the overwhelming majority of people who used it were normal people using it for their own financial privacy, which is the purpose that Roman intended. Oh yeah, for absolute certainty. Anybody who's ever used the tool or looked at the website, or read up on this stuff, that's exactly how it was marketed. It wasn't marketed to criminals. After explaining to the jury how the Ethereum blockchain works and how Tornado Cash anonymizes transactions on the network, Axel stated that once the platform's mixing pools were launched, Storm and his co-defendants burned the keys to them, rendering the developers unable to control or to have any control over what happened within the pools. The government's, and that's the bulk of what this Tornado Cash thing is, right? The government's case is about how Roman should have stopped hackers from using pools, said the defense attorney, but he couldn't do this. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you say, you're going to provide some sort of functionality to stop a certain group from using the tool, right? What you also do is you undermine everybody else in the process. This is the case with encryption. This is the case, the case with tools like this. So such a feature, if it were to be added, would be extraordinarily dangerous to the rest of us, to people who are trying to protect ourselves, from hackers and, other abusive actors. On the awkward subjects of Storm's washing machine t-shirt, Axel said that it was worn in poor taste. I disagree with that statement entirely, but okay, I understand why you would say that in a court. But that it's like a comic strip or a meme. It was a joke. Yeah, I go even farther than that and saying there's different interpretations of this t-shirt. Like I was saying before, one interpretation could be that you're creating maybe a tool to launder money, but that's not necessarily the case. Again, laundering money has to do with criminal proceeds. It says nothing about that. It's saying that you're washing something, you're cleaning it, you're making it, anonymous, but anonymity is not a crime in and of itself. The defense attorney rounded off her opening remarks by stating that Tornado Cash was simply a tool that both bad and good people used. It was not inherently bad in and of itself. Therefore, neither are its creators. It's like the same thing as like if you sell a computer to somebody, they can use it for bad stuff. They can also use it for good. Most people aren't using it for bad stuff, but some percentage of the population is going to be. You should not be found guilty of some sort of money laundering offense just because somebody could use it to launder money. Same thing with the internet. Somebody could use the internet to launder money. That doesn't mean most people are using the internet to launder money. How the trial unfolded. After opening statements, the prosecution called its first witness, Lynn, a victim of crypto pig butchering scam. And this is where it gets kind of really messed up, because they're basically using evidence or testimony from somebody who has no connection to Tornado Cash at all, or the funds that crypto that she bought. Lynn explained, but the government is saying that she does have a connection to it, and this is just an outright fraud on the government's part. Lynn explained how a scammer convinced her to open a Crypto.com account, deposit a total of over $200,000 into it, and then buy crypto with the funds, before transferring that crypto to a shell company called NTU Capital, where Lynn was able to view her portfolio. The funds were then allegedly stolen and put through Tornado Cash to make them untraceable. The problem is that wasn't true. Later in the trial, Storm's legal team raised the prospect of a mistrial in relation to Lynn's testimony, arguing that there is no concrete evidence connecting the victim's stolen digital assets to Tornado Cash, thus rendering her testimony prejudicial. However, the prosecutors maintained that the subsequent testimony from an IRS criminal investigation special agent, and by the way, an IRS criminal special investigation agent is not an expert in blockchain technologies and should not have been relied on for expert advice in this particular case. In fact, none of this evidence should have been presented at trial because it lacks a scientific basis. And this is one of the reasons that blockchain evidence was not introduced at the Crypto 6 trial with Ian, explicitly because there is no, first of all, the tools that they're using to analyze it are proprietary, and there's no science behind it. And there's a certain minimum like scientific acceptance that has to occur before evidence is, or tools are allowed to be used for the introduction of evidence at a criminal trial like this. At a lower level, when it comes to like getting a warrant, it can be used, but not at a criminal trial like this. And I think that maybe that was probably a failure on the part of the defense to get it disallowed at trial itself, because this should never have been used. Confirmed the funds were laundered through the mixing services after a few hops, which validates the inclusion of Lynn's testimony. So basically, like, they're sort of, the agent is saying that how would I explain this? This would sort of be like saying, okay, let's say somebody steals your dollars and then they go to spend it at a grocery store, and then the grocery store goes to the bank, and then at some later point, like, somebody like tries to anonymize it, and somehow like the anonymizer is like supposed to like be somehow liable for knowing that that some at some point in time those funds were like from a criminal source or something like that, and it would be an impossibility to know that or do anything about it. But that doesn't change the fact that the government is making it look like Tornado Cash did something wrong. Not that they were even able to do anything about it, but they're trying to argue that they were able to do something about it, even though that's not really true. George reportedly said that Storm had control over the funds after an account connected to Binance sent crypto to Tornado Cash smart contract addresses. Based on the communications between co-founder Storm, Pertsev, and Semenov. And this is the thing. Like, so what they're doing, it sounds like, is twisting communications between these individuals into something that they want that isn't true. And then when you look at actual experts, and they brought in actual experts, which usually you don't get, outside experts that are not the government, right? The outside experts have said, hey, what the government's saying is not true. The government's expert witnesses are lying. Another witness for the prosecution was the FBI Special Agent Joel DiCaprio, who had been tracking crypto and virtual assets for the FBI for 15 years, and testified that during certain periods of time between September 1st, 2020 and August 8th, 2022, as much as 55% of the funds that moved through Tornado Cash were obtained through criminal activity, such as hacks. He also highlighted over $1 billion in stolen funds and moved through Tornado Cash. Except the problem is that wasn't true. However, in cross-examination, the defense questioned the legitimacy and accuracy of some of the data cited by DiCaprio and argued that only 10% of the funds that moved through Tornado Cash transactions during the time period in question were obtained via a confirmed criminal activity. When it came to the defense witnesses on July 28th, day 11 of the trial, Dr. Matt Edman, co-founder and partner of Nexo, a digital forensics and investigation firm, took the stand. Dr. Edman explained in detail the extent to which Tornado Cash was decentralized, highlighted the precautions Storm and his co-founders took to prevent bad actors from using the service, and called into question the validity of analysis presented by some of the prosecution's witnesses. Yeah, I mean, basically, what we have here is a case where the protocol itself is decentralized, and there was a website that was included with the software when you downloaded it. So if you didn't want to download the software, you could go to their website, and the website would then communicate with the protocol. I don't know if that was being done through like a JavaScript or something like that, or if it actually ever communicated with the servers on, the Tornado Cash servers, but it doesn't really matter either way, in that ultimately at the end of the day, nothing's stopping somebody from using Tornado Cash protocols, whether or not the Tornado Cash website exists. Based on one account, Dr. Edmond was particularly strong witness for the defense. However, the same observer also noted that the jury looked a bit bored. And this is the problem. The jury's not paying attention and maybe even overwhelmed as the witness walked the court through a lot of technical jargon and its reference. At the end of day 11, Tyler Alameda, cybersecurity expert at Coinbase, took the stand for the defense to briefly share how he used Tornado Cash to maintain his privacy when he made an Ethereum donation to the Ukraine War Fund. So yeah, I mean this whole thing is crazy. There were other people here too that testified, including the Dr. Matthew Green, one of the brains behind cryptocurrency Zcash, which is one of the most privacy-preserving protocols out there, with the exception that there's also a non-privacy sort of version of it. And most people are using the non-privacy preserving version, but nonetheless, he is definitely going to be an expert, like a leading expert. You usually don't get this kind of quality in terms of the experts testifying. In this case, the government's experts were terrible, and the defense's experts were, well-known people who were reliable that you can trust in terms of their testimony. Let's see here. There was more rumors that Storm himself may testify, but he didn't. He did not take the stand. So closing statements from the prosecutor and defense came on July 30th. And we're still waiting for the jury to deliberate, and we do not yet have a conclusion as to, guilty or not guilty, and on what charges, I guess, or counts, if they do find him guilty. So this is basically a big case. You can be pretty confident that this will be appealed if he loses. Actually, it might be appealed whether he loses or wins, in that the prosecution may appeal the case as well, just because of how significant of a case this is. There was a plea deal, unfortunately, in the Samurai Wallet case that was announced today, as well. And I don't know, I haven't read this story yet, but my battery is about to die, so I'm not sure how far I can go with it. But basically, the Samurai Wallet founders faced prison after taking a plea deal, unfortunately.
What were they charged with?
So they were very similar to the other case with Tornado Cash founders.
Does Samurai Wallet have a built-in mixer or something?
Yeah, so Samurai Wallet coin has a built-in coin mixing platform, and they pleaded guilty in the United States federal court to charges of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. They did not plead guilty to several other charges against them, including money laundering. So there you go.
Oh, that's too bad. Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. Let us know what's on your mind. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Protection. Eleutheromania. The insatiable desire for freedom.
Filibuster. Police state.
It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app, or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. FSN's Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te calls the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. FSN's William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline tariff is lower than the 30% the US had threatened, but the EU had originally pushed for a zero-for-zero agreement.
During the week, Canada and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. FSN's Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A tsunami warning issued this week for parts of the US West Coast and Japan was downgraded quickly after a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake off of Russia's east coast sparked widespread concern about potential impacts across the Pacific. After the downgrading, officials said that coastal areas should still remain cautious for any further activity. Ira Spitzer sent this report from the US West Coast from the city of San Francisco.
One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded struck deep beneath the Pacific Ocean near eastern Russia, triggering tsunami warnings across the region, including in Japan, the Hawaiian Islands, and the U.S. West Coast. Waves over a meter high were recorded in California and Hawaii, but caused minimal damage. Still, emergency officials are urging residents to stay alert, particularly near harbors and beaches, due to the potential for strong currents and any more aftershocks.
There was worrying new data for the United States on Friday that showed job growth slowing dramatically in recent months. Unemployment also rose slightly, all of it raising questions about the overall strength of the US economy. FSN's Mitch McCann pored over the numbers and sent this report from New York.
The US economy added 73,000 jobs in the month of July, well below analysts' expectations of 100,000 jobs. At the same time, job growth for the previous 2 months was revised down by a total of 258,000, an unexpectedly high number. The slowdown may indicate that the job market is much weaker than previously thought and that American employers are adopting a wait-and-see approach to the president's tariffs before making hiring decisions. The data shows employment in the US government continued to decline by another 12,000 jobs, and professional services and business services lost 14,000 jobs. Meanwhile, the US unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 4.2%.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
Tides are caused by the moon. The moon's gravitational pull also sucks up the feces and urine of the ocean floor, dumping it in the intertidal zones. The tide goes out, revealing pus-filled cysts known as tide pools, while the moon itself remains hypocritically pristine. Crabs are one of the many disgusting denizens of intertidal pools. They feed on feces and corpses with their demonic mouths. Scuttling hither and thither, they compete relentlessly for the juiciest excrement. Finding a walrus turd is truly nirvana for these abhorrent beasts. After accumulating too much filth to move, crabs bathe themselves in the ocean. Waste floods off the crab's exoskeleton and back into the tide pools as the cycle of begins anew.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Give us a call. Let us know what you're thinking about tonight. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
We've been talking for most of the night about Tornado Cash. I think, let's see, you had a similar story about Samurai Wallet.
Yeah, I did. We have some unfortunate, an unfortunate situation with the Samurai case, basically, where there was a plea deal that was arranged, which is really messed up because both in the Samurai Wallet case and the Tornado case, we were talking about basically protocols and software.
So
that was written by software developers.
Is Tornado Cash Ethereum specific?
Tornado Cash is Ethereum specific, and Samurai Wallet is Bitcoin specific.
Okay, so that's a Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, but they both have similar functions, basically.
Okay.
So they have some sort of mixing capabilities.
Yeah, I never used Samurai Wallet, but I heard it was really cool.
Yeah, I'm in this kind of in the same boat here. I don't think I ever installed it. There's a possibility I did. My always, how do I say this, interest and concern is getting other people to use cryptocurrencies, and it gives us control of our money, basically, in our finances. And certainly privacy is I also value privacy, and I would encourage people to use it for that reason. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to adoption and making use of it, it's, the first priority has to be getting people to use it, whether or not it's private or not. And so I haven't worried quite as much about promoting the privacy aspect of it, even though I certainly have, or privacy coins, for example. I'm a big supporter and proponent of Monero.
Monero is a great coin. Yeah,
Monero is great when it comes to a privacy perspective. The entertaining thing about Samurai Wallet and also Tornado Cash was that they're basically making something that wasn't private, private. And so the other option that you have is to just use a privacy friendly coin like Monero, as opposed to something that isn't privacy friendly. So yeah, you can get rid of Tornado Cash, and you can get rid of Samurai Wallet, and it doesn't really change anything from a privacy perspective in some respects, because ultimately at the end of the day, people can just use Monero, or they can use Zcash or something based on Zsharks, I think is how you pronounce it.
ZK Snarks.
Yeah, ZK Snarks, that's it. Which is basically an even more privacy-friendly protocol by comparison to Monero. Monero kind of has the test of time in there, but it's also gotten a little bit weaker over the decades, so it's not quite as good.
I kind of saw that coming. As technology advances, Monero is a very basic privacy coin. The protocol it uses is pretty simple.
Well, and it's far more complicated than something like Dash from a privacy perspective, and it's still very privacy friendly. And they've made enhancements to it. Actually, there's an enhancement either coming or it's already come that has greatly increased the privacy of Monero. But it did need some updating here.
Yep, I knew they'd have to do something about it. Just because as technology goes along, it's going to make it more challenging for the protocol to keep up.
Yeah. And basically, I always like to describe Zcash or at least the math behind it, the privacy aspect of it, as basically being more scientific. They use something called zero. What is it called?
Zero knowledge proof.
Zero knowledge proof. That's it. Zero knowledge proofs. So it's definitely sort of the next level. Now Zcash itself, because there's a non-anonymous component, most people are using the non-anonymous version, basically, of the protocol or something along. I'm not saying that quite right, probably, but something along these lines. So you probably don't want to use Zcash, but there are other cryptocurrencies that are more like Monero in that you can't incorrectly use them in some respect. And that's the thing. Monero, you can't send it in you can't use it in a way that will undo your anonymity. In some respects you still can, but it's harder to do basically. Because it's got privacy on by default, whereas Zcash does not, even though if you have it on, it's better at protecting your privacy. It's sort of like that.
Dash ran this experiment too. They used to have private send, and they decided to do away with it because most people never used it, and they found that when only a very small pool of the Dash users were using the private send, it was very easy to untangle, so to speak, the transactions and find out.
And this is why if people are going to use a privacy coin, the one they probably are going to want to use is Monero, because it has a very, very, very large number of users.
Yeah, it's the most used privacy coin.
You kind of need that in order to blend in.
Yep, it adds entropy.
Yeah. So now I don't know 100% know that's the case. That matters as much with zero knowledge proofs and the Zcash forks that are completely private and they don't have any non-private option, but nonetheless, Monero is still a good choice for people to use. It's got a good community behind it that is concerned about privacy and keeping that privacy going, and they have made sure that the updates continue to make it an effective solution in that regard. And that's not necessarily the case with certain other sort of looser privacy solutions that have come along over the years, like Dash, for example. I'm not saying don't use Dash. I'm just saying it's not, today we would not consider Dash to be a privacy-friendly currency, cryptocurrency, as we would Monero still to this day.
Right. So with these, with the Samurai Wallet people, is it two guys that were charged?
Yeah, so it's really hard to understand this article. So this is coming from CoinGeek.com, and the title, I don't know exactly. The title, I think, is Samurai Wallet Founders Face Prison After Guilty Plea. So I don't know. What I'll do is I'll read this. I'll read a little bit of this, and you can help interpret whether or not this is 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people. Basically, I think they used people's last names, but then they also referenced by first name, and it's not clear which person they're talking about as a result. But here we go. Or maybe they've got 2 people with the same last name. I am not sure. So here we go though. Keon Rodriguez and William, co-founders of the Samurai Wallet coin mixing platform, have pleaded guilty in a United States federal court to charges of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. They did not plead guilty to several other charges against them, including money laundering. So, so Samurai Wallet again is a wallet. I don't think it's quite the same thing as Tornado Cash, which was a mixing platform. Samurai Wallet, I think, was more along the lines of being a wallet and then implementing a mixing solution within or protocol. And this is different again from both Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet are different from a mixing website. These are protocols, so you can arrest the developers, but that doesn't stop the solution from working. There's nothing to shut down. There's nothing to take out. Ultimately, at the end of the day, these tools still work. In April 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice accused Samurai Wallet of facilitating over $2 billion in illegal transactions and laundering more than $100 million in criminal proceeds through its mixing services. At the time, and again, I'm disputing the choice words here. They're calling them mixing services, but again, it's more like mixing protocols, as I understand it. It's not a service like you would use if you went to a website and you sent your money to that website to sort of launder it for you. The protocol is doing that independent of any individuals. At the time, Samurai's co-developers Rodriguez and Hill pleaded not guilty to charges of money laundering, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, wire fraud, and computer fraud. So I don't know if you hear that. So we've got Samurai's co-developers Rodriguez and Hill, and that is by comparison to Rodriguez and William. So I don't know if these are like three different people or if we're, because there's other two people that we referenced before was a co-founder and which probably also was a developer and I think a chief executive officer, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, at the time, Samurai's co-developers Rodriguez and Hill plead not guilty to charges of money laundering, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, wire fraud, and computer fraud. However, court documents filed Tuesday in the Southern District of New York. Notice how all these cases are being brought by the Southern District of New York. Indicated that CEO Rodriguez and Chief Technology Officer Hill intended to change their pleas. Sure enough, during a Wednesday morning hearing before Judge Denise Cote, the pair pleaded guilty to the second charge in their indictment, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business. What's kind of interesting about that is they've only pleaded guilty to one charge. So I wonder if the prosecutors agreed to drop the other charges if they pled guilty to one of them. But right now, according to this, it's saying that they still have to face those other charges. So it would be really weird to have a person plead guilty to one charge and then go to trial for the rest. But I guess it could happen. Rodriguez and Hill will be sentenced in November and face a maximum prison sentence of 5 years and $250,000 fine each. They will also still have to contest the other charges, and if convicted on all counts, could be looking at up to 25 years in prison. Like if you're gonna fight one, you would think you would either plead guilty to one charge and they would drop the others, or you would fight them all, right? Like, why would you not fight them all? Like, it just doesn't make much sense to me. But I think there's something we don't yet know about this story. All right, so Samurai Wallet case. On April 24th, 2024, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announced the arrests of Rodriguez and Hill over the involvement in the development and operation of a Samurai Wallet mixer. The indictment alleged Samurai executed over $2 billion in unlawful transactions due to its lack of a money transmitting license. As again, it's a piece of software. This is crazy that you'd be prosecuting developers over this license, as well as its founders. A deliberate failure to implement. This is their, so they're quoting deliberate failure to implement anti-money laundering and know your customer protocols. Again, how do you even do that? Like at a protocol level, right? Like a piece of software, how is that going to do that? And like, even if you implemented something that somehow like some sort of AI in the software that scanned it and would only work with you, if you somehow pass it, like the person could just modify the software and rebuild it. Because this is a free software or open source software. So Samurai was also accused of facilitating more than $100 million in money laundering transactions from illegal dark web markets such as Silk Road and Hydra Market. Again, they had no control over the protocol. They had no control over the software. This is not a typical mixing operation website. This is a program that you downloaded to your phone. It didn't connect to, Samurai Wallet servers or anything like that. It only connected to like other users. It was decentralized. So, I mean, in theory, like if you wanted to go after somebody, I think maybe you would try and go after like other people who are part of who were running the same software as you. But the way they're going about this just is crazy. But I think that the problem is that it would be futile to try and go after other people who are using the software. So I think that's why they're trying to sort of use these scare tactics against developers to say, don't you dare write privacy preserving software. Rodriguez was arrested in the U.S. while Hill was detained in Portugal and later extradited stateside. This was followed by the platform's .com domains being seized and Google Play halting downloads of the Samurai app for US users. I want to make clear here, you can still install this software just because you remove it from the Google Play App Store. There's these things called APKs, and you can still find this app out there and still download, install, and use this app. Meanwhile, the help of law enforcement agencies in Iceland, Samurai servers were also seized. So the servers that's just one of the places where you can download this APK file. The other place was from the Google Play Store. Unlike many coin mixers based on Ethereum blockchain, Samurai was set up to obfuscate the digital trail of BTC tokens and to keep users' identity masked. Samurai also offered a feature called Rico Chat, which added extra hops of history to your transaction and allowed customers to stump the blacklists and help guard against unjust third-party account closures. So I think what they're referencing here is if your crypto went through their mixer and it ended up at an exchange, the exchange would close your account because it knew that it was coming from a pool that was, basically mixed basically with other proceeds from other people. The DOJ claimed such features were actively marketed to criminals, and you're gonna get a laugh out of this and how they determined that they were actively marketed to criminals. And in one of Rodriguez's court hearings, Judge Cote noted a tweet from Samurai's X account that read, "Welcome new Russian oligarch Samurai Wallet users." This was a joke. Like they're literally, the government loves to do this. They love to take jokes out of context and make it look like you've done something wrong. These people don't agree with your politics. That's it. That's all it is. So you're literally going after somebody for politics. It's literally a persecution, not a prosecution. Other than their ill-advised flaunting of the platform's legal gray areas, along with seemingly leaning into the mixer's appeal to questionable groups and individuals. Yeah, they weren't seriously like trying to get Russia or Putin's people to use the service. I mean, like we're talking about like a minuscule number of people, right? Like it wouldn't make any rational sense to market to this group, on which a judge and jury is unlikely to look favorably, undoubtedly, which is exactly why the prosecution brings this kind of stuff up. Rodriguez and Hill's chances of a positive outcome in their federal case took a further hit in March 2024 with the conviction of Roman Sterlingov. Again, I'm sure I'm butchering this. I believe that's the guy in the Netherlands who was convicted on money laundering in the Tornado Cash case. Sterlingov, the Swedish-Russian operator of the Bitcoin Fog. Oh, nope, I'm wrong. The Bitcoin Fog Mixer. So this was an actual website that mixed cryptocurrency. So this is very different from the Tornado Cash and the Samurai Wallet case because this guy was actually laundering money for people. He was taking their money, their crypto, and laundering it on a website or a server. Okay, so he would have been probably having to comply with money laundering regulations in theory. Was convicted in a U.S. court on similar charges to those leveled against the Samurai duo, namely money laundering, operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, and violating the District of Columbia Money Transmitter Act. All right. So basically, that he was not just writing a piece of software. He was not just writing a protocol that people used. He was actually participating in the laundering or the mixing process. And that's the disturbing thing, that they're trying to go after people not for running a website, but for writing a piece of software. At the time, U.S. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco and Sterlingov thought he could use the shadows of the internet to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in BTC without getting caught. Yeah, okay. These people were doing it in the open, all right? This is ridiculous. This is so manipulative. But he was wrong. No matter where you operate, if your cryptocurrency service reaches the United States, you must abide by U.S. law. So first of all, that's not true. You only have to comply with the law in the jurisdiction of the country that you're operating in, or possibly any country that you're either doing business in and connected through via that method, or for which your government basically has extradition treaties with. And there is, generally speaking, a law both in that country and your country. And this is why you can do this. Some of the people who were in the Tornado Cash case, for example, there were 3 of the guys. Only 2 of them were actually prosecuted. And the reason for that is because one of those guys went back to Russia, and obviously Russia doesn't have such a law against it. And so, and it also doesn't have extradition treaty with the United States or the Netherlands. So yeah, this is complete nonsense what this prosecutor is arguing or saying. But he was wrong. No matter where, so this is 100% false. So this is what the prosecutor said, but he was wrong. No, the guy wasn't wrong. He was 100% right. But he was in a country which you did have an ability to kidnap him basically over this. No matter where you operate, if your cryptocurrency service reaches the United States, you must abide by U.S. law. And that's obviously not true. It's obviously there's lots of services out there that operate completely legally. And if there's somebody who's breaking the law, in theory, it should have been the person who's using the website, maybe not the person who's operating the website. Parallels with the Samurai case can also be found in the trial of the Tornado Cash Mixer co-founder. So there are closer parallels to the Tornado Cash case than there are to the what was this case I was talking about just now? The Bitcoin Fog Mixer case. If my memory is correct on all of these, there's a lot of different cases going on or that have gone on recently, so it's sometimes hard to keep track of which is which wrapped up this week. The 34-year-old Russian expat is currently awaiting a verdict on charges of money laundering and facilitating sanctions violations. With the Sterlingov's conviction and guilty pleas now lodged for Rodriguez and Hill for unlicensed money transmitting. If Storm is also found guilty, these cases together will establish a pattern and significant precedent for how privacy-preserving platforms and the open-source developers behind non-custodial software are treated under U.S. law. At most, what this is going to do is going to ensure that basically developers publish their code anonymously, or don't operate from within jurisdictions where the United States can extradite from. So in other words, if you're going to develop software like this, you're going to want to do it from, say, Russia, for example, or maybe China or some other country that doesn't extradite.
This is like they're saying, go ahead and develop crypto wallet software, but if we don't like it, you're going to end up in a prison cell. Yeah. And if we do like it, you can operate, in perpetuity, and we'll leave you alone until we decide not to. But we're never going to let you know what the rules are. Right. We're just going to say you didn't get the proper license, and then we're going to arrest you and haul you in front of the court. And we're going to make all kinds of threats so that you just take a plea deal. Yep. This is prosecution through, or making law through judicial actions, I think is the way to phrase that. In other words, it's not the law. The government, the lawmakers did not pass a law to regulate cryptocurrency. What they did was they went, people like Trump and Joe Biden, they went and they just started prosecuting and reinterpreting law in order to make arguments and twisting laws that were never applicable or never intended to be applicable to this kind of stuff into being applicable to this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like playing a game of Monopoly with your older brother and he decides he wants to make up the rules as he goes along. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Give us a call. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. We still have one segment to go. We'll be talking about Ian's case next with the Crypto 6. Yep, and hopefully we'll get your thoughts on the air. It's Free Talk Live.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, "Did you get my email?" or emailing to say, "I left you a voicemail." If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. Ever since Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers. I'm Jagruti Dave in Washington.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. Ever since Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te calls the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. Ever since William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline tariff is lower than the 30% the US had threatened, but the EU had originally pushed for a zero-for-zero agreement.
During the week, Canada and the United Kingdom announced plans to recognise a Palestinian state in September. Those countries followed a similar announcement from France, the three nations trying to put pressure on Israel to end its military campaign in the enclave. Ever since Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday that Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in September as long as the Palestinian Authority holds elections next year without Hamas and agrees to a demilitarized state. The move makes Canada the third G7 country to announce plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the last week, joining France and the UK as international pressure mounts on Israel over the starvation crisis in Gaza.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. You can call in, get your thoughts and ideas on the air. The phone number here is 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Stu.
And Mr. Penguin.
And before we get back into our story, we've got a caller on the line. On the screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, hello.
Hello, nice to talk to you. So,
Hi.
yeah, I just
Is this Sarah?
Yes.
Hi,
This is
Sarah in
Sarah
New
from-
Mexico.
Yeah, Albuquerque. So, I just learned that how they're going to implement the drone better to catch the drag racers. Like they have these, they do donuts and wheelies, and they have a big party set up, and they drag race.
Yeah.
So they know that they're happening places, they're little hot spots that I think they know where they're going to do these drag races, so they get.
Everybody knows
heads
where they're
up.
going to do the races.
Well, they've done it before. So everybody hears about, they leave that little donut tire marks, and then they, run into walls or whatever. They kill somebody. It's like, they
Oh, they
all these
rarely
stuff.
kill people at those things. I think
Well,
most
every
of
once in a
the
while
time
they
when
do.
somebody dies at the street races, it's because somebody made a bet they shouldn't have, and then it turns to gun violence.
Yeah, I mean this is what we call fear mongering, Sarah. It's you're creating an impression of danger that mostly doesn't exist.
Yeah, these guys go to they go to an industrial district late at night. There are no kids walking around, and everybody knows that there's races out there.
I mean,
you're not
right,
going to get run over by the guys
it's kinda
racing
funny.
their cars in the middle
It's
of the
kind
night.
of funny because we also have people who go skiing and skydiving and all sorts of other dangerous hobbies. But we're really concerned about like this. I mean, it's yeah, sure, there's a slight bit of risk there, but every day that you get on the road, you're taking a risk. So
Yeah, so anyways, I am in favor of this. So they have these drone technology, and what is this? They're already set up, hovering around. So when they're setting up shop, they already have pictures of their cars, their license plate. They have zoom in power. They can fly in close. So when they do start racing and speeding and causing all this noise in the middle of the night, and they make all this havoc, by the time they run off, we already have pictures of all of them. They could make of a car. The drones take pretty good pictures. So, they could use that in court if they have a zoom in their license plate. Because before it was by the time you get the calls, there's racing and they're waking me up and they're burning tires. By the time you go out there, they're already disappeared already.
So Sarah, I
that was the
have a
problem.
question for you, Sarah. You've got this malicious intent here in going after people, and I want to know what makes you think that these people won't just cover their license plates up?
Well, I don't know, but what about the make of the car? And don't they get some face shots?
Sure,
They
but you
could
do
do
realize
a
that there's
zoom
lots
in.
of cars with the same color and make and year, right?
Well, I don't know. It's a tool. So once they start setting up, the cops could already be out there and block the street so they don't run off. The thing is that they're doing all these.
The cops could go out there and block the street so that nobody walks or drives on it while the kids are having their race for 2 hours, and then
Wouldn't
and
it
then everybody's
wouldn't it-
happy.
Yeah, wouldn't it make much more sense to work with these people and like terms of like blocking streets off so they can do this? I mean, if you're genuinely concerned about safety, then
Well, maybe they could have be able to do that if they have the drones. They know that's. I think Mesa del Sol. I've never been out there by the concert area. It's kind of far out of the city. So they're setting up shop. Yeah, maybe they're like, they're already planning all this. There's cars. They are already. So then they would maybe they don't have to ticket them, and maybe they can go there and then just block the street, so they can't go there. So we already know that you're setting up. But the thing is, I'm against this because
Yeah, but racing is really cool, Sarah. Where are these kids supposed to race?
Sarah,
it's
I
really
want to
cool.
know. I want to know.
You can't take that
I want
away
to know
from
what you
them.
do for fun, Sarah, because I want to pass a law that bans that activity and then starts locking up little old ladies
and coming after them with a drone.
I mean, you guys as a group are just a fan of locking people up and using violence against them who are hurting no one. I mean, yes, you're acting as if there's some sort of danger, and I get that, but they haven't committed any actual like violent acts here.
She wants thought crime
prosecuted. Knock over my power line. They're drag racing behind our HAO. There's a little alleyway.
Okay.
I see the tire marks. They're doing donuts, and they hit the yellow poles.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
But then go after them for that. Go after them for the property crime. Don't go after them for the drag racing.
And this happens because you won't give them a better place to do it.
Right. When you give people no choice, they're just going to break the law. You're not going to actually make things safer. You're literally defrauding people. You're deceiving the public by suggesting that this is somehow by outlawing it's somehow going to stop it or make it safe, make the population safer. It's not. If you want to make the population safer, you would be looking to see how you could make maybe make it so that certain areas are blocking off streets or something like that. There's other examples of how populations were made safer or less nuanced, or not nuanced, nuisanced by young kids in particular, like skateboarders and things of that nature, without outlawing skateboarding, right? I mean, what did they eventually do? They did outlaw skateboarding. They tried that. It didn't work. Kids would do it anyway. What did they do instead? They eventually came around to the idea of building skate parks. And now we don't have as much, many kids being a nuisance in regards to skateboarding in places that are bothering other people. And there's nothing to say that you can't do something similar for this.
Because they were skating out on the sidewalks and all of that stuff. I was like, that's kind of like a very peculiar park. I never saw the origins of it. But you're right. I think there was a bit talks about making these racing arenas in other cities. I've seen shows like that.
Why don't you, next time you go, and instead of complaining about these people, why don't you go and you suggest to the city that they develop some sort of skate park for racing, basically.
Yep. That sounds like a much better solution than chasing them off with drones and threatening them. And
I mean, why waste all that money on policing when you can simply block off certain areas for them?
Every time you chase the racers out of a certain area,
creates danger.
Right, all you've done is
start chasing people in cars at high speeds.
You force them to find a new place, and they're unfamiliar with this new place, and so then you have a higher likelihood of something going wrong. You really just need to find a solution that's going to make everybody happy on this one, and it really shouldn't take all that much thought. Thanks for the call tonight, Sarah. We've got another call on the lines that we're going to go to now. On-screen caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, not what I called about, but I was in one of those warehouse industrial areas in New Albuquerque one time, middle of the night, because there was a bar there as well. And I was walking from the bar down and back to my car, and cop pulled over one of the street racer dudes.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm just saying.
Oh.
Okay. So what'd you call him about?
He cited him, and
did you feel like your life was in danger because there were street racers around?
Well, I take the opposite side as you guys, but I think that the solution is, like you said, is just, do the skate park thing and solve the problem, put community money into making them you can go here on these nights a week and race your street legal car. And
I doubt you even have to do that. It's probably more along the lines of parades, with blocking streets off. It's just a matter of, giving them an area to do it in that's relatively safe.
Yeah, like out in Salt Lake City, the racers really liked California Avenue when I was out there because it's concrete and not blacktop, and you can go really fast on it. But even better than that would be like the Bangerter Highway out on the west side. If they just closed down, a couple of intersections in a row, you could have really long races at really high speeds and have a lot of fun pretty safely.
Yeah, you could do that. Formula One style, where you just close down for an event, for the streets. And
they close down cities for like filming movies and stuff. I don't see why they couldn't do it 3 nights a week
for parades.
They
do it for movies. They do it for all sorts of reasons. Market day events. Yeah. I mean, the idea they can't solve this problem is absurd. Without causing the need for violence against other human beings.
And then another thing you said was, you said if you've been railroaded, call in. Once again, not what I was calling about, but I went and tried to enlist an attorney to help me out at one point, and that attorney's paralegal used that exact language. As she said I was being railroaded. This was not criminal, this was civil, regarding the trafficking of my kids. But she said that I was being railroaded by the court. So it's something they do all the time. Doesn't matter what court you're in.
Yeah, it's pretty standard.
Yeah, it's disturbing. Most people don't have enough interactions with the courts to know better. And
even if they do, they don't have the intestinal fortitude to stand up to these guys.
Oh, for sure. I'm one of the very few people, probably in the world, that regularly goes and films trials, and it's absolutely disturbing what I see. And I don't think New Hampshire is particularly terrible or anything like that. But I also film in a little bit in Mass and Vermont and some surrounding states, and it's worse. It's way. I mean, people would be. I think if people really understood, they would be absolutely disgusted. Because the system just doesn't work. It doesn't work for anyone.
Well, it works perfectly for some people.
Well, maybe for the prosecution because they use it to move up the ranks politically. But I mean, for the most part, yeah, it doesn't work for the public, and it doesn't work for the individuals that they're going after.
Right.
Again, for the most part.
That's why the system needs to be as the directions for this game say right in the directions. It says, matter of fact, just an hour and a half ago, I had a cop on the phone, and I told him that exact. I said, this is what you're saying about what you can and can't do about what I'm calling you about is exactly why we, the people, need to follow the directions in the Declaration and dissolve the government. That's you.
Well, we're doing that to some degree in New Hampshire. I was just reading an article the other day about how the people who worked on basically getting rid of vehicle. No, I'm misphrasing this.
Getting rid of what?
I want to say vehicle registration. We still have vehicle registration. It's inspections. So we got rid of inspections this year in New Hampshire, and this same group is basically working towards getting rid of other, nonsense vehicular laws and regulations. So I don't know what that'll be exactly, but maybe they'll get rid of driver's licenses next, or they'll get rid of license plates.
You can use the example of me and as evidence when you talk to these people, because I actually, part of the reason that I didn't already move my legal residence and myself to New Hampshire is because at the moment the vehicle that I'm operating happens to be, I don't know whether it'll pass emissions or not. Might and might not. I don't know. But I've never had to worry about it because I live in locations where emissions is not required. And then all of a sudden, New Hampshire, you got statewide requirement to pass emissions, and then if you don't, you got to do what? And
you can get the Montana plates. That's a very
I don't know if they do.
Here.
I did read something about emissions testing in New Hampshire, but I don't know if that applies to your normal vehicles. It's probably only like trucks or something like that. No. I tried. Actually, since you guys already live there, I asked the people on Free Talk Live, what the gospel was on these questions I had about about the intricacies of residency. You want people to move there? Okay, I got some questions. Not that you have to answer them, but maybe But since you guys didn't know, I went online and researched it to the tune of several hours. I read all the different parameters about New Hampshire and compared it to a bunch of other states as well.
That sounds like a lot of not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. That's why I tried to just simply ask people instead of having to go. But I couldn't get my answers, so I ended up going online for several hours. Pardon?
Why would you ask?
Why would I ask what?
Why would you ask what the rules are?
Well, because I'm freaking intending to move there, dude.
Oh, just move. Just do it your own way, man. And then
he's saying you don't have to comply with the law, basically.
Just wait for them to stop you and tell you what the law is.
Yeah, no, I'm not effing around. Dude. I got other things to do. I'm not effing around.
Just make your best educated guess at what compliance looks like.
I mean,
I'm not playing anymore.
Here's the thing. New Hampshire's laws tend to be very weak in a lot of ways, in sense of, like, if you get pulled over for driving without a license, for example, it's a $60 fine. If you get a parking ticket, it's like a $5 ticket, right? You can fight those if you want, but and likely win. But the point is, it's not like other states. Like a lot of states, if you did anything at all, basically, like their minimum fine is $300 or something like that. That's not New Hampshire. So.
Okay, well, good to know. It would have been good to know, to get that commentary when I asked the questions, months ago before I went and did my own research.
Yeah,
So,
and
anyway,
I'm not suggesting that you be a scofflaw or anything like that. I'm just saying it ought to be pretty intuitive what's right and wrong, and so if you're doing your best,
I don't play here, dude. I don't play. It's like at this point in my effing life, in children's games, they got rules. Okay, here's what we're doing. Here's how you play the game. And if the goddamn government can't have their S together enough to tell me what the F the deal is without effing around, well then F you, man.
That's all government, man. But here's the thing. So the inspections are gone, and so are the the testing. I believe it is as of like next year. So yes, I guess we did have it to some degree, but it's gone anyway, or it's going to be gone very shortly.
So wait a minute. So what you're telling me, under the category of not effing around, in boilerplate, black and white. So your state's legislation that was proposed. Are you telling me that now, at this moment, the emissions requirement, getting rid of that has been passed, and you just have to wait until the effect date? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. The inspections are gone as of like January 1st of 2026, I believe, and then emissions testing is gone as of like some date shortly thereafter. I don't know exactly what the date is, but within a year, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep your ears open, and if I haven't found it online for myself,
you can do a search. Just do a search for it. You'll find an article. You'll find plenty of articles on it. But yeah, it was signed by the governor. It was passed by the Senate and the House. So it's a done deal at this point.
Okay, great. Good to know. Okay, so. Like I said, all of that, not what I was calling about. What I was calling about is you're talking about these various wallets and these cases of law surrounding them, which in the realm of trying to get people on board using crypto, et cetera, whatever. Let me ask the question again, because it's an evolving thing, and you're talking about wallets, and you don't have to recommend one over another, but which wallets are you presently fans of and not so much?
Yeah, I can answer this question. I think most people are best off with Edge Wallet. That doesn't mean it's the best, most privacy friendly wallet, but it does support Monero, and it does support the other popular in-use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin Cash, Dash.
Almost any coin you would want to use.
Yeah, pretty much. It's got like, I don't know, like maybe 15 to 20 of the most popular cryptocurrencies supported, but the primary ones that people are actually using are Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, and Monero. So,
right, okay, and that brings up another question that you piqued my memory from something you said in the past. So now, if a person is going to use the Edge wallet, and they got to download it, and so does it make a difference whether you download that Edge wallet from in the case of Android, from the Play Store versus going direct to the Edge Wallet website and downloading it from them?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're on Android, I'd probably just install it from the Play Store. But if you're not, then you can go to the website and scroll down to the very bottom of the page, and there's a link. There's something called an APK, and you can download it that way manually. I think the benefit of installing it using the Play Store is you'll get the security updates through the Play Store automatically. But if you download the APK, it's going to alert you that there's an update, but you're going to have to manually install a new update whenever they come out with an update. So if you're on a stock Android phone, just use the Play Store. If you're not, then download the APK and you solve your problem there.
And the same scenario, the same thing you said holds true if you have Apple. Just go to the Apple Store.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not 100% sure about Apple. I think it has Edge Wallet, but yeah, it would be. You wouldn't. I don't think you can even install really the software from outside of the Apple Play Store, I think is what they call it.
Oh, right.
Anyway, so yeah, you just go to open up the Apple Play Store and then search for Edge Wallet, and you should spot the wallet in there.
That brings up another question: is one platform better than another? Meaning Apple's mobile platform. We're talking about mobile at the moment, without branching out into the non-mobile. But for Android versus Apple Mobile, now, first of all, Apple, I use Android. Apple Mobile is iOS. Is that the platform?
Yeah.
Okay. Is Apple or Android, one or the other, better for interacting with crypto in a mobile fashion?
I'm trying to think. Apple may not.
I would say not unless you want to get real nerdy about it.
Yeah, I think so let me back up a second. I think I recall, I think I know one person who uses crypto on his iPhone, and I believe there's something. Nope. I'm thinking of probably Matrix, not Edge Wallet. So yeah, no, I don't think so. The only thing I would say is your best bet, if from a privacy perspective and a security perspective, is to not use Android or an iPhone, but rather to use a phone with something like Lineage OS or Graphene OS. Those you can get, but you can find places that you can buy such phones online. But I mean, yeah, it's not. Okay. They're not quite as readily available as what I'm trying to say. Like if you go to a brick and mortar retailer, you won't find those types of phones.
Right. Graphene OS. What was the one you said before that?
Graphene OS and Lineage OS are the two that I would probably suggest looking into.
Lineage.
Lineage, Lineage. Lineage OS.
Okay. Is that a wordplay on Linux?
I don't think so.
No. Yeah. No problem. And between Lineage and Graphene, do you have a personal preference?
I don't answer questions like that.
Why not?
OPSEC.
Yeah, OPSEC. Operational Security is what it stands for. Oh, okay. I'll tell you what I'll recommend, but I won't necessarily tell you what I use personally.
Okay, well, I don't care about what you use. Let me ask it a different way. Yeah. What pros and cons can you think of Graphene versus Lineage?
That I can answer. So Lineage OS is easier to use, I would say, and Graphene OS is geared more to be sort of more secure. I don't entirely know what's going to happen with Graphene OS. Know that I think Google is locking down their Pixel lineup of phones, and Graphene OS is pretty much only runs on the Pixel lineup of phones, I believe. So I don't exactly know what's going to happen with that, but definitely the Lineage OS phones you can still get. There's some Moto G, I'm trying to think what the phones are. It's the Moto lineup basically is what I would look at as far as the Lineage OS phones are concerned, because those are really well supported.
Oh, you say I happen to use Motorola. So you say the Motorola phones actually are conducive to working well with Lineage?
Yes, Lineage OS. And yes, but not all of them. So you'd have to take a look and see which ones are supported.
Thanks for the call tonight, David. That's all the time we had. We didn't get around to talking about Ian's appeal being denied, but I'm sure we can get into that tomorrow night, as well as more of your calls. Thanks for listening. This has been Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
It's if I'm watching not a cable, just regular news, and they give me the news, and the next flash is two people fornicating, okay? And then every other word is F you, a B-I-C, a hoe, and all this stuff, and penis. Do you think I need to say that? That's not acceptable no matter what. You're saying free airwaves. For anything goes for anybody.
For public access, yes. That's exactly its purpose. That's the purpose of it.
Why not?
Do you want a red light in front of a cop?
Probably not in front of a cop because
All right.
he'd hurt
What's
me.
the same difference if you're going to have that kind of FU and seeing two people fornicating after they just said the weather is 92 degrees and 5 inches of
Wait, I think you're a little confused about something
No,
here.
I'm not confused.
Point of information.
You're trying to confuse people.
Let's clarify
Free
then.
airwaves are free within limits.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Coming up next after the news, Hour 1 of the latest episode of Free Talk Live here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. Much of this week was dominated by one word: tariffs. The Friday, August 1st deadline forced countries to make last-minute deals with the US to try and avoid crippling duties on exported goods. But just ahead of that deadline, US President Donald Trump announced new tariff rates ranging from 10 to 41%, but giving countries another 7 days before those rates come into effect. FSN's Jagruti Dave sent this report from Washington, D.C.
Among the dozens of countries hit with new duties, Switzerland was surprised to find it had been slapped with a 39% tariff, and Canada said it was disappointed by Trump's 35% levy. The White House says its strategy will bring in more foreign investment to the US, but experts warn of higher costs for American businesses and consumers.
Countries were left trying to work out what their rate meant. Taiwan called theirs of 20% temporary, with Taipei still hoping to strike a deal. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report from Hong Kong.
Speaking in Taipei, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te calls the new levy temporary and says it's too early to say it represents a failure. He said the main reason the two countries had failed to reach an agreement by US President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline was that procedural arrangements had not allowed them to complete a summary meeting for the negotiations. He added Taiwan is willing to have more talks, with the final goal being a reasonable rate that has a minimal impact on the electronics industry.
In contrast, the European Trade Commissioner praised the 15% deal that was struck with Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. FSN's William Denslow sent this report from Brussels.
In a social media post, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said the trade deal signed with Washington will restore trust in the transatlantic economy. He says that EU exporters will benefit from a more competitive position, but a number of European leaders say the framework agreement is lopsided. The 15% baseline